The events began amid a fierce battle between a young warrior and a strange-looking flying creature, as these beings launched a sharp attack toward her, while she quickly retreated to avoid the strike. The seriousness and determination were clearly visible on the girl's face as she prepared to confront the enemy with her sharp sword. But suddenly, she noticed another danger behind her, which startled her and caused her to stop briefly in shock. It turned out that the second threat was the appearance of more flying creatures of the same terrifying form, which made the situation even worse and more difficult. These creatures resembled giant insects with sharp purple wings, red eyes, protruding horns, and sharp claws. The warrior tried to defend herself skillfully against the attack of these violent beasts. But unfortunately, she received a sudden blow that struck her body with great force. Pain appeared clearly on her face, and blood began to gush from the wound as she screamed in agony. The monsters surrounded her after they managed to inflict serious harm, and she stood with great difficulty in the middle of a pool of blood. The warrior collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath and silently apologizing to someone she called her big brother. Her brother's face appeared in her mind as he told her he would be waiting for her. But it seemed the desperate situation led her to believe she wouldn't be able to keep her promise to him. The scene shifted to a completely different one, a beautiful modern city filled with an atmosphere of calm and serenity. There was a young man walking through the city streets carrying bags full of groceries. He heard a voice calling his name, Ro, from behind, and he turned to see where the voice came from. It was a group of young men asking whether he had bought a lot of groceries because his sister, Nana, would be returning soon from a dangerous mission in a cave. Ro smiled and confirmed that his sister would return soon after completing her mission in the upper-tier dungeon. He asked about the health of one of them named Koji, and they exchanged a few words about his condition, with Koji assuring them that he was feeling better now. Then Koji said goodbye to Ro and promised to visit him later to spend some time together. Ro agreed and told him he would be waiting. But after Ro left, his companions criticized his comfortable lifestyle, while they risked their lives for a living. One of them mentioned that he lived that way because his sister was a member of the famous 7 Stars organization. He reminded the others that Ro and his sister had lived through harsh conditions in the past, and that it was his sister who had saved him from a hard life, where he nearly died of hunger. They recalled a scene from their childhood when his sister, Nana, was giving him food while they were 2 poor children on the street. Despite the group's understanding of his situation, they eventually remarked that he was living an easy life depending on his sister. The scene changed to a view of the city at sunset, with a narration implying that Ro's life might return to poverty if anything bad happened to his sister. Ro entered the house, took out the vegetables he had bought, and began hurriedly preparing the food. He noticed the time and became worried because he was very late for his tasks and needed to hurry with preparing dinner. He began cutting the ingredients quickly and with skill. Then he started cooking the food on the stove. After great effort, he finally announced that the food was ready, and he seemed satisfied with his work. He checked his phone but felt anxious and tense because his sister was late returning home. In the end, his phone's screen showed a wallpaper of him and his sister smiling happily, and Ro wondered whether she was working overtime again. Late at night, Ro was in the dining room where he had prepared a meal for his sister, but the food remained untouched on the table. Suddenly the phone rang, and Ro raised his head in surprise, uneasy about the unknown caller, then quickly answered, saying, "Hello?" The call was from the explorers organization Epicurean Association, asking if he was a relative of Nana, known as the Radiant Light, from the 7 Stars organization. Ro quietly confirmed that he was. He was utterly shocked when he heard that his sister had been killed in an S-rank cave, and that the confirmation of her death had been made 2 hours earlier. Ro screamed in disbelief, losing his balance from the horror of what he had just heard. The caller told him they just wanted to notify her family, and asked him to keep the news confidential to avoid public unrest. The call ended with the information that compensation would be sent within a month, and that he should contact them if he had any questions. Then the line went dead. Ro sat in a state of shock and disbelief, repeating his sister's name, Nana, in utter astonishment. Old memories began to flood his mind, like the time when his sister, still a little girl, had asked him if she could start calling him Big Brother, after learning of their parents' death. He remembered her smile as she happily called him Big Brother, delighted by his presence. Then he recalled the times when she got angry on his behalf, whenever others mistreated him or spoke ill of him. His last memory of her was when she waved him goodbye with a smile, saying she'd be back soon from her mission, asking him to prepare something tasty and wait for her. He recalled the moment she hugged him before leaving, as he asked her to be careful, and she laughed, assuring him it was just an easy A-rank mission, nothing to worry about. He remembered her face as she reassured him again that the mission this time was simply an A-rank adventure, so there was no need to be concerned. Ro suddenly jolted as he realized the contradiction. Nana had told him it was an A-rank mission, but the caller said it was S-rank. It became clear to him that the association had a very specific protocol for handling the sudden death of a 7 Stars member. He wondered how they had reached a conclusion so quickly within just 2 hours inside such a dangerous cave. Then he looked sorrowfully at a photo of him and his late sister, while a heavy silence filled the room. 5 days later, Ro went to the headquarters of the Explorers Association. The branch head, Mr. Rakuto Hoto, asked him why he had come. He added that if it was about his sister's death, everything had already been explained over the phone. Ro surprised him by requesting to register as an explorer himself. The branch head was stunned by Ro's unexpected request and looked at him silently in disbelief. It was clear that Mr. Rakuto was feeling tense and confused about Ro's sudden decision. Mr. Rakuto explained the dangers of being an explorer, that it meant directly facing death, emphasizing that Ro had no known ability that would qualify him for such a role. He also calmly told him that, as the closest person to the radiant light, he was sure Nana would have wanted to protect him from such a fate, and that her sincere wish was for him to live a comfortable life. Ro pointed to the association's rule that allows relatives of fallen elite explorers to join regardless of their personal abilities. The branch head fell silent for a moment, then agreed to Ro's request, and ordered that his registration process begin. Ro thanked him for his acceptance and cooperation, and the official kindly responded that they would always be ready to assist him if he ever needed anything. Ro then left the place with a faint smile that reflected his new determination. The head of the association, Rakuto, seemed deeply puzzled by Ro's decision, which appeared completely serious. Moments later, Ro was handed his official Explorer ID card, for which he thanked the staff member upon receiving it. Ro stared at his new card with calm focus, realizing this was the beginning of the path he had chosen. He recalled his earlier conversation with the head of the association, who had explained that one member of the team who had been with his sister managed to escape using a special item as soon as the incident occurred. The director added that the team had been on a secret mission in a sealed S-rank cave, and suggested that Nana may have lied to Ro when she told him it was just an easy A-rank mission, so he wouldn't worry about her. Ro was deeply affected by hearing this painful truth, and his face showed both pain and silence. In his heart, he swore with firm resolve that his sister's sacrifice would not be in vain. He pulled up his hood and walked out, heading toward his new goal. He walked through the city streets with determination, assuring himself that he would uncover the truth no matter the cost. The scene shifted to the entrance of a D-rank cave, where a number of explorers had gathered, ready to go in. The explorers were chatting enthusiastically about their upcoming mission as they prepared to enter the cave. One of them jokingly said he wanted to be a frontline explorer, to which his companion replied sarcastically that he was the one who panicked just from seeing monster corpses. Ro approached them, and one of the explorers quietly told him that staying in the back was better since it meant no fighting, then instructed the group to move out. They all headed toward the cave gate, ready to begin the mission. Inside the cave, some explorers discussed how, even after many years in the field, it was still difficult to get used to danger. One of the new explorers hesitantly asked if they should wait here, which drew mocking laughter from the more experienced members. The new explorer explained that he wasn't sure what to do, but had decided to join in anyway. One of the veterans told the new explorer that there was no point in talking outside, and that he'd understand everything once they went in. Then they noticed Ro and commented on his unfamiliar face, asking if he was a beginner too. Ro calmly and confidently replied that he was indeed a beginner, which greatly surprised them. One of the explorers advised him to stick with the group and carefully watch everything they did so he wouldn't get into trouble. Suddenly, everyone heard the sound of a monster approaching from deep within the cave, putting them all on high alert. A massive creature appeared inside the cave, prompting everyone to move quickly and prepare for confrontation. One of the explorers asked how they should handle the situation, and his colleague responded that they'd have to wait for instructions since they didn't have clearance to engage. A new explorer expressed concern about the risk of death in this adventure, clearly showing his extreme anxiety. The veterans were surprised by their teammates' reaction and didn't hide their own unease in the tense situation. Ro remained steady, thinking that this situation wasn't unfamiliar to him, and that he had expected to face such dangers when he decided to join. He began to recall that only a combat explorer ranked D or higher had the right to fight and repel the dangerous monster. Meanwhile, there was a support explorer of E rank standing in the back, holding medical supplies, usually civilians or beginner explorers from the lowest tier. One of the explorers noted that they were just part-timers and offered to help the new explorers if they needed anything. Ro and his companions continued working in the cave when one of the senior explorers called out to them, asking them to come quickly. Everyone immediately headed toward the indicated location with seriousness and caution. Upon arrival, they were shocked by a horrifying scene. A group of explorers lay on the ground, severely injured next to a massive monster that appeared to be the cave's guardian. The explorers on the ground were in a pitiful state, while Ro's team stood with expressions of disbelief. Ro stood alongside the others in visible shock at the gruesome sight, the horror gripping them all. One of the support workers even vomited violently due to the grotesque sight and the shredded bodies of the fallen explorers. An enraged explorer screamed at him in anger, calling him a bastard. He tried to attack the worker, but someone quickly held him back to stop him. A female explorer who was present calmed the situation and told the angry man that the worker was new and he should calm down and try to understand the situation. She then asked the team to remain calm, especially since they had experience with such scenarios. The wounded explorers were taken away while the team leader scolded one of the younger explorers for hesitating and not staying alert. The young explorer, confused, told Ro he didn't understand why he was being reprimanded, and Ro replied that his inappropriate behavior could be seen as disrespectful to the dead and their loved ones. The young man expressed regret and explained to Ro that he didn't mean it, and that he had never seen anything like this before. Ro quietly told him that the team understood, which is why they hadn't punished him. The young explorer then asked Ro how he knew all of this despite being a beginner like him, and Ro calmly replied that he had heard it from someone else. A sorrowful, pained look appeared on Ro's face as he remembered the person who had taught him these things. Ro recalled a conversation with his sister Nana, who once told him that a beginner explorer had died the previous day. His sister had explained that new explorers faced great risks and sometimes lost their lives easily due to lack of experience. She added that a friend of one of the deceased explorers had lost control and killed the beginner, and although she tried to stop him, the situation spiraled out of control. Nana had believed that killing was excessive even in such circumstances, while Rose said he didn't know the exact details, but he was aware that combat explorers often look down on support explorers. One of the explorers interrupted Rose's thoughts, asking him to return to work and clean up the monster remains. The man was surprised by Rose's composure despite being a beginner, suspecting he was just pretending, while Rose simply saw him as annoying. One of the senior explorers explained to the team that they had to destroy the heart of the cave to purify it completely, pointing out its location. However, before destroying the heart, they first had to defeat the Guardian, as the heart would only become accessible after the Guardian was eliminated. He clarified that monster cores vanish quickly after death, but the Guardian's heart remains until it is destroyed. While moving the bodies, the team leader explained to the new explorer that monster corpses held no value outside the cave. One of the team members confirmed that the reason was that the bodies couldn't be taken out of the cave. He added that, on the other hand, after defeating the Guardian, the team might obtain weapons, tools, or even a skill book if they were lucky. He explained that sometimes rare items could be found after the battle. The team leader told them that anyone interested in loot should talk to the combat explorers, then ordered the team to move quickly, as the cave would close 30 minutes after the heart was destroyed. Indeed, the team left the area quickly to carry out the remaining tasks before the cave sealed shut. As Ro and his companions completed their mission in the cave, one of the senior explorers informed them that the loot would be handed over and that they could return home. He added that their wages would be transferred to their accounts within 3 days. One of the veteran explorers advised Ro and his companion that support roles weren't necessarily safe, even though they didn't involve direct combat, and that they should train well if they wanted to survive. As they exited the cave, the older new explorer told them that the faster they could run, the better their chances of survival. One of the others complained about how hard the mission was, even though he'd thought it would be easy at first. Ro paused for a moment, gazing at the sky, a look of determination and resolve on his face. Deep inside, he reaffirmed his need to become stronger. 2 days later, Ro went to the association's building, where the branch head met him, and asked about his experience in the cave. Ro simply replied that the cave had been strange and dangerous, prompting the branch head to jokingly ask if the treasures inside hadn't tempted him. Ro answered with a stern look that nothing was worth risking his life for. The president was silent for a moment, surprised by Ro's response. He turned to Ro and remarked that he and his sister were very much alike in that regard. The two stood quietly in the grand hall, deep in thought. Then the branch head commented that he found it strange that Ro had chosen this path, especially when he could have lived comfortably off his sister's reputation and fame. He asked Ro what his true goal was in choosing such a dangerous path. Ro answered firmly that he couldn't rely solely on his sister's legacy, and that he was tired of the looks people gave him, as if he was living off her success. The president acknowledged that the disappearance of the radiant light would eventually draw attention to Ro as her only heir. He encouraged Ro, saying it was a good thing that he wanted to rely on himself, and that he'd like to introduce him to someone who could help him achieve that. Suddenly, an older muscular man appeared and called out to the president in a joking and friendly tone. It turned out that the man was Charlie List, a veteran combat instructor at the association and one of their strongest trainers. The president introduced Ro to Charlie, stating that he would be his new mentor, while Charlie joked that he was just a thug. Charlie walked up to Ro and jokingly asked in disbelief if the president really wanted him to take care of this little kid. The president explained that Ro was the brother of the Radiant Light, which greatly surprised Charlie. Despite his hesitation, Charlie eventually agreed, stressing that this would be the last time he trained a beginner. Charlie then told Ro to follow him, while the president walked away smiling, confident in both of their abilities. Ro tried to introduce himself, but Charlie rudely cut him off, saying he already knew his name, and told him not to bother him again. Charlie asked Ro if he had used the Elite Explorer Heir privilege to reach his current position, and Ro responded with defiance, asking if he had a problem with that. Charlie questioned whether Ro truly understood what that privilege meant, or if he had been tricked into accepting it. Ro calmly and confidently replied that he fully understood what the privilege meant. A clarification text explained that explorers are ranked, and the strongest among them are known as the 7 stars, like his sister Nana. The text also clarified that when an elite explorer dies, their family gains certain benefits, provided the explorer had named a successor before their death. However, there is one extremely rare benefit that's usually considered the least valuable: the opportunity to train at the Explorers Association, an opportunity Ro used to develop his strength on his own. Charlie stood in front of Ro and told him firmly that if he truly understood what had been said to him, then it was time to make a decision. Ro hesitantly asked, "A decision about what?" A strange silence hung between them for several moments. Charlie sighed and explained to Ro that there are 3 main types of training: attack training, defense training, and speed training. Then Charlie said that Ro wouldn't understand just from words, so he would give him a practical demonstration. Charlie began with attack training, showing immense strength by destroying a training dummy with a single strike. Then he demonstrated defense training, calmly withstanding several powerful attacks without flinching or being affected. After that, he showed speed training, moving at such incredible speed around the area that it looked like he was disappearing and reappearing in different places. Charlie turned toward Ro and directly asked him which type of training he would choose. Ro paused for a moment in thought, then announced his decision to train in defense. From that moment, Ro began training seriously, starting with long-distance running to build his endurance. But he quickly became exhausted and breathless from the intensity of the training. He paused briefly, bending over to rest, clearly worn out. He wondered to himself, while feeling nauseous and extremely fatigued, whether this type of training was really worth it. During the training, Ro recalled how Charlie had praised his decision to focus on defense, calling it a smart choice. Charlie explained that most of his former trainees chose attack or speed training, as those gave them more options, either to fight or escape. Then, with a frightening seriousness, he added that those who made that choice all ended up dead. Ro was deeply shaken by these words and visibly worried. Charlie looked at him silently and challengingly, without saying anything more. Then he told Ro in a less harsh tone that he could set his own training routine, but he first had to build his body properly. Ro hesitantly asked if Charlie wasn't going to train him personally. Charlie laughed and said that someone who got exhausted just from a bit of running wasn't worth training. Charlie then firmly struck Ro lightly while sternly telling him that he had to train harder. With obvious fatigue and strain, Ro weakly agreed with Charlie's words. Charlie then gave him a deadline of 2 months, explaining that if Ro didn't reach a specific level by then, he wouldn't bother with him, regardless of him being the Radiant Light's brother. He added firmly that he didn't care that Ro was Nana's brother because his deceased sister was no longer around to protect him. Ro felt completely exhausted from the training, but he appeared determined to continue. He resumed running again with greater strength and determination. Days passed, and Ro continued his training seriously and consistently, with visible physical improvement. As time went on, Ro also spent significant time studying and gathering information about monsters and dangerous caves. One day, Ro sat in front of his computer screen, examining information about a powerful monster named Dogombi, a legendary Class S-rank creature with high control over water and wind, as well as strong resistance to magic. Finally, Ro lay back, gazing at the ceiling of his room, and clearly understood that legendary monsters were extremely powerful, which is why new explorers like him were not allowed to enter high-rank caves. Ro bought some food from the store, and the vendor thanked him for the purchase. As Ro walked down the street, some people noticed him and spoke mockingly, saying he eats meat often and goes to the rest station daily, even though it's a luxurious place meant for the wealthy. They added sarcastically that he lives a very comfortable life despite having no special abilities. Ro continued intense training as the days went by, running with great effort on August 10th. On August 15th, he was performing other difficult exercises to strengthen his body, clearly showing signs of exhaustion. The days passed quickly as he kept training seriously and without pause. After a month of intensive training, his body had clearly become stronger and more fit. Suddenly, Mr. Koji entered and was surprised to see the dramatic transformation in Ro's physique. Ro greeted him kindly and invited him in. Mr. Koji noticed the change in Ro's appearance and said he almost didn't recognize him because of how much his body had changed through training. Koji looked at Ro with a warm, thoughtful expression. Then Koji suddenly asked when Ro's sister Nana would be coming back. Ro calmly replied as he prepared tea that he didn't know, and Koji responded that the information he heard said she was on a long-term mission and wouldn't return anytime soon. Silence filled the room, and when Ro noticed, he offered Koji a chance to share anything on his mind, since they had known each other for a long time. Koji then expressed concern about how much money Ro had been spending lately, especially since he was going to the rest station daily, which could attract attention. Ro laughed and said that Nana was around, so no one could hurt or steal from him. Suddenly, Ro's expression changed when Koji seriously said he had heard rumors that something bad had happened to a member of the 7 Stars organization. Ro asked Koji where he got that information, and Koji replied that he had overheard some A-rank explorers speaking about it secretly. Koji appeared visibly concerned and directly asked about Nana's current status. Ro smiled calmly and assured him that if something had happened to his sister, there's no way he could be living this peacefully. Silence fell between them after Ro's words, and both seemed lost in their thoughts. Koji apologized for asking such a strange question, explaining it was out of worry, but Ro reassured him that it was fine and thanked him for his concern. Ro offered Koji lunch, but Koji declined, saying he was busy and needed to leave. After Koji left, Ro closed the door behind him and stood there for a moment, reflecting on their conversation. He checked his phone and found multiple missed calls from a number saved as idiot number. 3 inches. Ro called that number and angrily asked the person on the other end why they hadn't answered his repeated calls. The person responded calmly, saying they had something important to ask him, which caught Ro's attention. Ro cautiously asked if it was about the 7 Stars organization, which surprised the caller, who then asked Ro what he knew. The caller suggested that Ro ask the association for details and hinted that the way Ro handled things could affect the help he might receive. Ro ended the call angrily, warning the caller not to say anything negative or offensive about his sister. On the other end of the line, a mysterious person was speaking over the phone, saying that the association was trying to hide the truth of what happened, but that was expected, given the national importance and influence of the 7 Stars members. The person on the line asked with clear concern if there was a problem involving Nana. Ro replied that he would try contacting the caller's older sister, which alarmed the speaker, who pleaded with him not to do that. The speaker panicked and began blaming himself nervously for attempting to arrange a meeting between Ro and his elder sister. While sitting in his home, Ro thought deeply, realizing that someone might be investigating his sister Nana's death. He wondered whether it was a power struggle or something else entirely. With deep sadness, he reached out toward a photo of him and Nana, silently questioning what was really going on. The next day, Ro sat quietly in the training yard, waiting with anticipation for his trainer to arrive. Trainer Charlie appeared with a smile when he saw Ro and told him admiringly that his transformation over the past 2 months was very noticeable. Ro stood before his trainer and confidently asked whether he had passed the training. Charlie replied coldly that his performance was just barely acceptable, then told him they would move straight to the next phase. Charlie told Ro there was good news and bad news. The good news was that the type of training he would receive now was only one kind. Ro then asked what the bad news was. Charlie continued with a sly smile, saying the bad news was that the training involved enduring continuous blows. Suddenly, Charlie delivered a very powerful strike to Ro, sending him flying and crashing to the ground. Ro hit the ground hard from the sheer force of his trainer's blow. Standing over him, Charlie calmly told Ro to remember that power well, because if he could withstand it, he would pass the training. Ro asked in shock and tension if that was all the training was, and Charlie explained that the goal was to increase his endurance, saying that as long as he survived all these hits, he would live a long life. Charlie explained seriously that this applied both inside and outside the caves, and that the one who survives in the end is the strongest. He declared with strong resolve that those who die cannot be called strong. Charlie then told Ro to begin by training with the combat dummy while he went to take a break. Ro began training with the dummy, barely managing to dodge its strikes. He grew angry with himself for continuing to dodge the attacks instead of facing them. He firmly decided that he would no longer avoid the dummy's strikes, as that went against the entire purpose of the training. Ro then took the dummy's heavy blows head-on with firmness and resolve. Despite the intense pain from the strikes, Ro insisted on enduring them, and not retreating. He stood his ground, taking the dummy's blows directly without flinching. Charlie observed Ro's performance from a distance, watching him take the hits with great patience and endurance. Charlie smiled with satisfaction, realizing that Ro was finally starting to understand that this harsh training would enhance his physical strength and endurance. Ro continued enduring the blows, certain that this seemingly pointless training would be the key to his true physical power. Suddenly, Charlie's phone rang with a musical tone, prompting him to glance at it in surprise, wondering who was calling. He then answered the call with clear irritation, remarking that he had only gotten 1 hour of sleep each night for the past week due to the endless tasks being assigned to him. An urgent call reached Charlie, informing him of the appearance of an S-rank cave in the village of Mizuyasu. The cave had already swallowed most of the village in a horrifying scene. At the same time, the association's president was holding a report in his office when there was a knock on the door. Charlie entered the office and told him that Kazami, one of the 7 stars, had given his approval for the operation. The president praised Charlie's ability to persuade Kazami, to which Charlie replied that it would have been easier if the radiant light were still around. Charlie sat down, clearly annoyed, while the president continued, emphasizing the urgency of dealing with this major issue, especially now that the radiant light was no longer with them. Charlie explained that it was impossible to contain an S-rank cave easily, especially since extensive efforts had been made over 2 weeks with no success, and nothing had been heard from the explorers for a week. The president asked when the cave's dangerous expansion was expected to occur. Charlie, holding the report, replied that it was expected to happen in 45 days. He added that he wanted the matter resolved quickly, noting that one of Kazami's key team members was injured, which made things more complicated. Charlie also mentioned a mysterious incident involving the disappearance of a member of the Kojima family and expressed sympathy for Kazami, adding that he needed to find his siblings. 45 days later, a massive vortex appeared at the cave site, signaling the beginning of a major event. A team of professional explorers entered the cave with caution and anticipation. Ro led the team forward with calm confidence. One team member urged everyone to hurry, saying the main monster was about to appear. Suddenly, the team came to a halt, on high alert, sensing something strange. The region's main monster appeared in a terrifying form, with glowing eyes. The explorers immediately charged at the monster with full strength and excitement for battle. A fierce battle began between them and the massive monster, which launched powerful attacks. Ro stood with 2 others, observing the fight. One of them commented that the monster was incredibly strong, and the team had only brought 3 highly experienced members. One of the strong team members rushed toward the monster, wielding a massive axe to fight it. The man delivered an incredibly powerful blow that struck the monster and caused deep wounds. The battle ended quickly after the main monster was defeated, and someone told everyone to start heading back. The team began to retreat, but Ro noticed something strange about the speed of their movements. Ro wondered to himself why they were moving at such a suspiciously fast pace. One of Ro's companions asked him if he knew something, and Ro replied that the speed of their attack was odd, and the number of monsters was far too few, which was cause for caution. Suddenly, a mysterious person placed a hand on Ro's shoulder. That person told Ro with a cryptic smile that they would watch his back and that he should take the lead. Ro calmly replied, "Understood," ready for whatever might come next. Ro suddenly realized they were surrounded and grew worried, wondering what they were really planning. Suddenly, a strange and suspicious-looking monster appeared before the team, making everyone tense and alert. The monster resembled a giant spinning playing card with question marks on it. Some team members smiled with excitement and said they were lucky this monster had appeared. One of the explorers was terrified and fell to the ground, asking what that strange thing was. The man sitting on the ground began shouting, insisting he was useful and could help, while Ro observed him calmly. Ro realized that the purpose of this event was to face an invisible monster, which reminded him of something important. Ro recalled a conversation he had with his sister Nana when she came home one day and said she had encountered an invisible monster. Nana explained then that the annoying creature forced people to choose someone among them to sacrifice. She described the monster's nature, saying it was like a roulette game, where the monster remained invisible until someone was selected. Ro asked her if the game had a countdown, and she responded that everyone who had seen it died. No one knew the full details. Nana added that the monster caused people to kill one another, and some were even willing to do it. Ro asked if the monster dropped good items upon being defeated. He then asked Nana what would happen if someone was chosen as the sacrifice. She paused for a moment, then answered firmly, Nana looked very serious as she said the chosen person must kill the monster within 60 seconds, or they would die. The monster in the cave began activating a countdown timer of 60 seconds. Images of the team members appeared on the monster's screen as selectable targets. One of the explorers quickly selected Ro. Another suggested picking someone else too, and using both their abilities to fight the monster. The countdown ended, and the monster launched a sudden attack on the two selected individuals. Ro and the other man were forced to face the monster alone, and strange forces appeared around them. The monster began its fierce assault with a loud roar. Ro's companion tried to withdraw, shouting that it was impossible to win against this monster. Ro angrily asked his teammate if he truly wanted to die by giving up. The man replied, trembling, that this monster was 3 to 5 times stronger than the main guardian. Defeating it was impossible. The man was suddenly struck by a violent attack from the monster and thrown far away. Ro tried to block the monster himself, but was also knocked down by a powerful blow. The man struggled to stand again in pain, while Ro also rose with great difficulty to face the monster. Ro shouted bravely that he would never give up no matter how strong the enemy was, and if his teammate wanted to sacrifice himself, he should do it alone. The monster attacked fiercely again, and Ro stood firm, blocking it with his weapon and determination. Outside, the cave in Mizuyasu village was shown expanding frighteningly, confirming the dire state of the situation they were in. Charlie stood in front of the massive, terrifying cave, which had grown increasingly unstable and dangerous. Suddenly, Kazami Shun, member of the Seven Stars organization known as Tenkin, arrived, carrying his enormous axe and accompanied by his team. Kazami informed Charlie that Tsuyoshi had sacrificed himself during the mission. He apologized sincerely, explaining that he wasn't strong enough as a leader, and Charlie asked him what exactly had happened in the cave. Kazami explained that the monster they faced was of the invisible type, and that Tsuyoshi chose to sacrifice himself to save the team. Charlie asked for confirmation about what happened to Tsuyoshi in the book. Kazami replied that he destroyed the book, saying it was the safest option. Charlie, clearly exhausted, grumbled that he hated always having to deal with such complicated matters. He stressed the importance of closely monitoring the situation, because the Child of Fortune was the greatest threat to humanity. Charlie recalled how the previous Child of Fortune had used the lives of 4 S-rank and 17 A-rank individuals to become an incredibly powerful killer. He decisively declared that if Tsuyoshi had become the new Child of Fortune, then he'd have no choice but to kill him, regardless of his strength. Kazami's team members told him it was time to inform the president that the main monster in the cave might be stronger than S-rank. Kazami pulled out a letter, explaining that he had received extremely important news. The letter stated that the radiant light had come back to life, shocking Charlie visibly. Meanwhile, Ro was fighting the monster inside the cave with all his strength, trying to protect himself and his companion from the ferocious attacks. Ro took another powerful hit from the monster, but managed to block it with difficulty. He staggered backward from the blow, but maintained his balance and prepared himself again. The monster increased the intensity of its attacks, striking with furious and terrifying force. Ro took a direct hit from the monster, slamming him to the ground. He thought to himself, acknowledging that the monster was 5 times stronger than the Guardian, realizing how dangerous the situation truly was. He charged again with enthusiasm, determined to attack with even greater strength. Ro noticed that the monster seemed to be toying with him and wasn't taking the fight seriously. He realized that the monster's long limbs made it vulnerable in long-range combat. He also noticed that the monster's main body hadn't moved from its spot the entire fight. Ro wondered if the monster's immobility was its true weakness. He decided to take advantage of that thought and moved in to strike directly at the monster's main body. He smiled confidently as he realized his strategy was working effectively. But he was caught off guard when he noticed something unexpected happen right in front of him. Suddenly, the monster grabbed Ro's leg, completely restraining his movement. With a violent motion, the monster hurled Ro high into the air with incredible force. Finally, the monster delivered a crushing blow toward Ro, slamming him to the ground with immense power. Ro crashed to the ground in agony, screaming in pain after receiving a powerful blow from the monster. Ro's companion cried out in despair, asking why Ro was still fighting when it was clearly impossible to win. The monster managed to restrain Ro and lifted him into the air, preparing for a final attack. It suddenly tried to devour Ro, and the situation seemed like the end had come. In what felt like his final moments, Ro thought sadly to himself that this was how he would die. But in that moment, Nana suddenly appeared in a glowing vision, reaching out her hand and gently saying, "Brother, let's go home." Ro reached out his hand toward her, whispering her name, Nana, as he nearly touched her. He recalled a memory from 4 years ago, when he and Nana stood before the grave of 2 dear people. Ro read the names on the grave, Ikoma Kasumi and Ikoma Enji, noting that Kasumi had died a month earlier while trying to save her husband Enji in a cave. Ro told Nana at the time that it wasn't her fault, trying to comfort her. But Nana cried with deep sorrow, saying she had been afraid ever since Ikoma's death and didn't know what she would do if her brother ever died. Ro tried to calm her again, but she insisted she would give everything for him, and if he died, her life would lose all meaning. Nana continued, firmly declaring that if her brother died, life would have no meaning, and she would never allow him to become an explorer as long as she was alive. She told Ro with determination that she knew he wanted to become an explorer, but she wouldn't allow it while she was still breathing. Ro gently agreed and promised it wouldn't happen, then asked her if she truly hated the idea. He smiled warmly, saying it was okay, because she was the most important person in his life. Meanwhile, Ro's companion launched a desperate attack on the monster, screaming with all his might. But his desperate attack failed, as the monster easily blocked his strike. Ro looked at his companion weakly, trying to regain his strength once more. His companion staggered back, trembling with fear and pain. But the monster struck rapidly, forcefully throwing him into the wall. Ro's companion fell to the ground unconscious, bleeding heavily from the blow. The monster opened its massive jaws to attack Ro once again. Ro was hit by a powerful attack as the monster sank its teeth into his body, causing him to scream in excruciating pain. But Ro gathered his strength, vowing to himself that he would not die before uncovering the truth behind Nana's death. He took another brutal hit from the monster but remained determined to resist. He repeated to himself with firm resolve that he would not lose this battle no matter what. He once again affirmed within himself that he would not die in a place like this while the monster moved in. Ro launched himself with all the strength he had left toward the monster, determined to defeat the one who harmed Nana. And indeed, he managed to land a successful strike, forcing the monster to release him and throw him aside. Ro collapsed to the ground after taking a powerful hit from the monster, but he gathered his strength once again. He stood up with great difficulty and watched as the monster shattered and vanished before his eyes. He sat against the wall, watching the monster completely disappear, wondering if he had truly destroyed its core. Exhausted, Ro questioned whether he had really bitten the monster's core and destroyed it. Then, with a weak smile, he muttered that it was a draw, and quietly apologized to Nana. Suddenly, mysterious green lights appeared around him, leaving him stunned and confused. He looked around to find a glowing blue virtual screen suddenly appearing before him. He approached the screen with extreme caution, trying to read what was written on it. Ro was surprised when he read on the screen that he had obtained a special healing item called Hyper Heal, which had been used automatically. He reached out toward the screen, which clearly displayed that he had received the Hyper Heal item. Later, a notification appeared informing him that he had acquired a special skill called X-Reuse as he lay in his room reflecting on what he had gained. Ro said to himself with sadness that he was still too weak, so weak he had to rely on miracles just to stay alive. Suddenly his phone rang. It was a call from Koji-san, and Ro answered, saying he'd head over right away. When he arrived, Koji waved at him happily and called for him to join them. Ro stood with Koji and a group of explorers at the cave entrance, and they asked him to wait a bit while they finished preparing. Koji asked Ro how his injuries were, and Ro replied that they were better now thanks to the Hyper Heal item. Koji explained to Ro that most people in caves are unhelpful, and that to become a combat explorer, he'd need a reliable, consistent team, but most famous explorers already had their own teams. Ro was about to respond, but the support team called out, saying it was time to begin. Everyone headed toward the gate, and Koji asked Ro to save the conversation for later and focus on the mission first. Upon entering the cave, everyone was surprised to find a stunning natural scene filled with strangely colored mushrooms. Koji explained that the cave was rich in resources, and the main monster was low threat, but warned against staying behind for too long. One team member was excited to find a rare type of mushroom called Shiwand Aki. Koji explained that gathering these resources wasn't dangerous, but it was exhausting and annoying. Koji told Ro that if he had known it would be like this, he wouldn't have asked him to come. Ro replied that he didn't mind and was happy to learn more. While gathering resources, Ro noticed some very strange things in the cave. Koji told him those things couldn't be used. A bit later, the combat team called out to let them know they had defeated the monster, and they asked Koji and Ro to clean the area while they went to collect food. Koji asked Ro to come with him to the battle site to help clean up. Ro noticed something strange in his hand, but it vanished before he could realize what it was. He stopped, wondering what had fallen from his hand without him noticing. Koji called to him impatiently, asking him to hurry up, while Ro remained puzzled, still thinking about what had just happened and how that object had slipped from his grasp. The massive monster collapsed to the ground, defeated after an intense battle. One of the explorers told the group he would handle treating the injured and asked them to clean up the area. 20 minutes later, the group had finished gathering resources from around the fallen monster. Ro held a carrot and told himself that the cave environment determines the types of resources that can be gathered, explaining that the previous cave had minerals, while this one had only plants. Koji asked Ro if he had collected enough resources, and Ro confirmed that he had gathered more than enough. While walking, Ro suddenly tripped over a stone on the ground. He fell unexpectedly, and his hand touched the body of the monster lying on the ground. His companions were surprised and confused by his odd fall, and the monster's body vanished. Koji questioned why the monster had disappeared, even though there was still 1 minute left before its official disappearance time. He then told the group it didn't matter. They needed to leave now. Before leaving the cave, Ro told Koji he had some things to take care of and would go on ahead. Koji agreed and said he'd transfer Ro's reward once he received it. When Ro returned home, he noticed a virtual screen appear in front of him, indicating an unread message. Ro wondered if this meant he hadn't had time to check this message earlier. After opening it, Ro saw the message said that the monster corpses and low-value materials he had collected could be repurposed into useful items via the skill X-Reuse. Ro was filled with excitement upon realizing that he could gain new skills if he used this ability wisely. But he also considered the risk of others discovering this new ability, thinking that if anyone found out they might exploit him, since he wasn't strong enough to defend himself. He sat and thought seriously about the next steps he needed to take. Ro decided he wasn't strong enough to explore caves alone, and that the best strategy was to remain in the back so he could safely use his new skill. He realized that using this skill without drawing attention wouldn't always be easy. Suddenly, Ro had a good idea, but hesitated, thinking it might trouble Koji. In the end, he decided to use the skill slowly as a way to repay Koji's kindness, without anyone noticing. Elsewhere, inside a luxurious building, a man was sitting and staring thoughtfully out the window. Another person suddenly approached him. The seated man turned and asked him with interest what he wanted. The standing person angrily asked why he had argued with their father and why he had gone into the cave. The man replied that it was his life and his older brother had no say in it. The older brother told him that if he wanted to risk his life, that was his choice. He wouldn't stop him. He then advised him, saying that if he truly cared about his family, he should protect his own life, because being an explorer isn't everything. The older brother walked away, but stopped when he heard his younger brother shout after him to wait. The younger brother, angry and emotional, screamed in pain, "Do you really want to abandon the Kazami family?" Meanwhile, Ro continued his harsh training outdoors, determined to grow stronger. Ro thought about how desperately he needed Koji's help with two things in order to dismantle more monsters. The first was to create multiple fake identities to reduce the risk in case his secret was discovered. The second was to ask Koji to buy a private cave for him, since the resources vary depending on each cave's environment. Ro recalled that explorers usually sell caves, but the buyer must be trustworthy to avoid future regret. He stopped training and kept thinking about his need for someone reliable with wide connections. Suddenly, Ro sensed someone behind him, which made him uneasy. He turned quickly to see a person in front of him, introducing himself as Yasukaji Kazami, reminding Ro that he had helped him in a previous mission. Kazami eagerly asked if he could join Ro in his upcoming adventures. Ro was shocked and puzzled by this sudden request. Kazami continued enthusiastically, saying he wanted to be like Ro, someone who doesn't give up even against powerful enemies. Ro told him that if he came here, that meant he had looked into his past. Kazami replied that he only wanted to see him and had no intention of bothering him. Ro coldly responded that following someone like him, who had no powers, was pointless, and advised him to go back home. Ro remembered that Kazami had also helped him before, so he no longer owed him anything. But deep down, Ro admitted that he disliked people who gave up easily, like Kazami. Ro firmly asked Kazami not to follow him or come looking for him again, but Kazami tried to stop him, asking him to wait. Kazami shouted with passion and determination that he wouldn't give up and would keep trying to join him. Later, Ro met with Koji, who told him he had tried to buy a cave but no one was selling at the moment. Koji explained that the pattern of cave appearances had started to change strangely, and that it was difficult to get this kind of information. Ro worriedly wondered whether this change was good or bad for humanity. Koji interrupted their conversation, pointing out that someone had been following Ro for quite a while. They both turned and saw Kazami waving at them from a distance. Ro told Koji that he had been on a mission with Kazami before, and ever since then, Kazami had been following him. Ro walked straight up to Kazami and asked him sharply what his true goal was in following him. Kazami passionately and sincerely declared that he wasn't lying. He truly wanted to accompany Ro because he was strong. Ro was surprised and said he was just a support explorer, not as strong as Kazami thought. Kazami insisted firmly that he was being honest, saying he had seen many strong people, but none who charged toward the enemy with such strength and resolve in desperate moments like Ro did. Kazami shouted with great enthusiasm that he wanted to become someone like Ro. He then explained that he was always compared to his older brother because of his personality and weak abilities, and he hated it deeply. Ro was surprised when he heard the words older brother, and began wondering to himself, who exactly was Kazami's brother? Ro was shocked when he suddenly realized that Kazami's older brother was Shunshin Kazami, one of the members of the Seven Stars organization. He suddenly recalled a past moment with Nana, when she had shown him a photo of the Seven Stars with a joyful smile. At the time, Ro had been busy cooking and asked her about the group. She explained that Fischl wanted a group photo with them. Kazami confirmed to Ro that his brother was indeed Shunshin Kazami. Ro remembered hearing that Shunshin had a younger brother, but he never expected that it was the Kazami standing in front of him. He thought about the odd contrast between the two brothers' personalities and began wondering what the Kazami family was really like. Ro apologized to Kazami, saying he just wanted a quiet life and didn't want to get involved with people who needed protection. Kazami tried to protest with a hesitant voice, but Ro interrupted him before he could finish. At that moment, Koji called out to Ro, asking him to get started with the task. Ro agreed. Ro briefly said goodbye to Kazami, saying, "See you later," and left the area. Inside another cave, the team of explorers stood before a giant octopus-like monster surrounded by glowing blue crystals. One of them complained, saying he didn't know how they'd collect anything from this thing, especially since he needed to get back early for his daughter's birthday. Ro smiled and told the man there was nothing interesting here and that he'd clean up the area himself, telling him to head back first. The man gratefully agreed and left with the others, promising to treat Ro to a meal next time. Ro sat in front of the monster's corpse, hoping this time he'd get rare materials instead of the usual common ones. He began using a special skill to dismantle the monster. He managed to acquire 3 dried octopus tentacles, along with damaged octopus skin. Suddenly a virtual message appeared indicating that he had obtained a new skill, Bronze Body, which increases physical durability. Ro thought that if he combined the skill with the defensive arts he had learned before, his physical endurance would improve significantly. Suddenly Ro heard footsteps approaching, making him tense up and ask what was going on. One of the explorers appeared and sharply asked why there were no monster corpses left, even though it wasn't yet time for them to disappear. The man's tone shifted suspiciously as he asked Ro what exactly he had done. Ro replied nervously that the bodies had already disappeared before he arrived, trying to act clueless. The man grew angry and accused Ro of mocking him, pointing to his watch and insisting he had been tracking the time accurately. Ro tried to think quickly of a logical explanation for why the monster corpses vanished early, but couldn't come up with anything convincing. The man approached Ro angrily with clear hostility, and Ro realized that no explanation would satisfy him. Ro tried to de-escalate, saying he had just arrived and truly didn't know what was happening, suggesting they leave the cave first since closing time was near. But the man didn't listen and suddenly struck Ro violently in the face, yelling that he didn't believe him. He pulled out a knife and threatened Ro, saying he had personally seen the monster die 10 minutes ago. He continued threatening, saying this was Ro's last chance to talk, otherwise. At that critical moment, Ro swiftly attacked the man and landed a direct hit, causing him to scream in pain from the unexpected blow. Ro delivered a powerful strike to the man who had attacked him, causing him to collapse to the ground instantly. Ro stood over the man, staring down at him coldly after knocking him down, leaving the knife embedded in his body. He slowly pulled the knife out while looking at him without emotion. Ro said coldly that he had given him enough chances to back off, but he didn't take them. The man lay motionless on the ground, tears streaming from his eyes in shock. He watched the scene, repeating in terror that maybe the rumor he had heard was true. Later, Ro washed the blood off his hands in the bathroom, completely silent. He looked into the mirror but was startled to see his reflection appearing strangely distorted. He began hearing a voice in his head repeating, "Killer," over and over, which left him feeling disturbed and anxious. The mirror shattered under the force of his punch, fueled by his intense rage. Ro stood there catching his breath after smashing the mirror, overwhelmed by tension. He gave a bitter, mocking smile as he thought to himself that in a world like this, it had become normal for there to be killers. He justified to himself that in a world where no one even knows if the law works anymore, killing was no longer a strange act. But he quickly caught himself, reminding himself that killing is still killing, and he wouldn't make excuses for his actions. Ro firmly decided as he walked away that he would no longer let anyone stand in his way. A month later, Ro was seen exiting another cave, pulling behind him a cart loaded with resources. His teammates greeted him, saying they thought he got stuck inside. Ro responded with a faint smile that he just got delayed a bit. Another explorer asked Ro to deliver the materials he gathered to the responsible team member. Ro agreed with a calm smile and assured him he would. His teammates let him go alone, commenting on how kind and trustworthy he was. After Ro left, one of them complained about the constant jokes made toward him, and another sharply told him to stop. One of them mentioned hearing a rumor that Ro was the brother of the Radiant Light, surprising everyone. They agreed that if the rumor was true, someone like him didn't need to work in a place like this. Later, Ro walked down the street after finishing some shopping. He walked calmly, letting out a short sigh. Suddenly, he stopped and asked out loud how long someone planned to keep following him. Kazami, who had been tailing him from a distance, tried to pretend he was invisible, but Ro suddenly grabbed him by the shoulder and said, "I'm talking to you." Kazami screamed in surprise at Ro's sudden appearance beside him. Ro silently stared at Kazami, who looked panicked and disoriented after bumping his head. Kazami, flustered, asked how Ro had discovered him, and Ro coldly replied by questioning whether he called that hiding, then told him to stop following him. Ro firmly warned Kazami, telling him this was the last time he would caution him, and if he continued following him, he wouldn't tolerate it anymore. Kazami stood hesitantly, wishing Ro would grant him just one more chance, but he started feeling discouraged and considered going home. Kazami turned away in frustration, and as he did, Ro began walking away from him. But then Kazami gathered his courage and loudly told Ro that he had recently discovered he could be very useful to him. Ro replied indifferently, questioning what someone like him could possibly offer, clearly stating that he saw no value in Kazami at all. Kazami insisted, explaining that he could sell items on Ro's behalf, which surprised Ro and made him realize Kazami had investigated his personal affairs. Kazami quickly denied it, explaining he had just noticed it by coincidence when Ro was selling something. He continued, asserting that he had strong connections and wouldn't interfere too much, making him definitely capable of helping. Ro thought to himself that although Kazami didn't have physical strength, he did have enough value through his relationships, and perhaps cooperating with him might be beneficial. While they were talking, they suddenly heard a massive explosion nearby, startling them both. Kazami shouted that this area was supposed to be safe, wondering aloud how such an explosion could happen here. They both looked up to find the source of the explosion and saw two people standing atop a tall building. Kazami was deeply shocked when he realized one of the two people was his older brother, Shunshin Kazami. The other person, wearing a white mask and concealing his identity, leaped toward Shunshin from the top of the building. The masked man introduced himself mockingly as the Supreme Right from the 7 Stars, expressing sarcastic surprise at finding such big prey as Shunshin. Shunshin immediately responded to the masked man's attack, using his extraordinary powers. The masked man effortlessly dodged Shunshin's attack, seeming entirely unbothered. The masked man offered to chat with Shunshin a little, curiously asking if he was interested in knowing his identity and objectives. Shunshin calmly replied that he had no interest whatsoever in his identity or his objectives. The masked man laughed, describing himself as just a theatrical villain making a dramatic appearance, then suggested to Shunshin that they cooperate now that they had met. Shunshin quietly prepared for an attack, summoning a powerful sword and declaring he would handle things his own way. Shunshin charged fiercely at the masked man, wielding his sword with tremendous force in a decisive strike. The masked man remarked that Shunshin was extremely ruthless, as expected from someone of his stature, but he appeared to be enjoying the confrontation. The masked man prepared a powerful counterattack, dark energy gathering between his hands. They exchanged powerful blows in a fierce mid-air battle. The masked man unleashed strong energy toward Shunshin, who quickly prepared to block the attack. The collision of their attacks caused a huge explosion, illuminating the sky from its intensity. Shunshin's sword flew through the air at incredible speed, heading toward the masked man. The masked man seemed delighted by the battle and praised Shunshin's brutality and power. He was surprised when Shun suddenly appeared directly in front of him, delivering a powerful strike. The masked man barely managed to dodge the attack at the last moment, causing him to swiftly retreat from the battlefield. The masked man smirked sarcastically after noticing that Shun was using 2 swords, commenting that he had just gained a useful new piece of information. Shun responded defiantly, gripping his swords and asking if that information was truly useful to his opponent. The masked man expressed great enthusiasm, saying excitedly that he was thrilled by the current fight. Ro and Kazami continued watching the intense battle from the ground, observing the violent exchange of blows in the sky. Suddenly, Kazami tried to run toward the fight to help his brother, catching Ro's attention. Ro grabbed Kazami and stopped him, telling him that if he charged into the battle recklessly like that, he would be killed instantly. Ro added seriously that if Kazami truly cared about his brother, he should first care about his own safety. Kazami was stunned by Ro's words and stood frozen in shock. Ro anxiously wondered who this mysterious masked man could be, someone capable of going head-to-head with Shun Kazami, one of the strongest leaders of the 7 stars. Ro began taking a photo of the masked man using his mobile phone. Kazami grew nervous as he saw Ro using his phone and wondered if they were just going to stand there watching. Ro started walking away and told Kazami that he would do what he could from his side. Later, Ro and Kazami arrived at Ro's residence. Ro told Kazami that he would consider his proposal and contact him once he made a decision, then quickly shut the door. Kazami tried to stop Ro, pleading with him to wait for a moment, but the door slammed shut in his face. Kazami sat on the ground in pain after hitting the door, grumbling that he thought he'd be allowed inside too. Meanwhile, Ro began working on his computer to analyze the photo he had taken of the masked man. He reviewed the combat footage he had recorded, examining every detail carefully. Ro suddenly paused after noticing a strange mark on the masked man's outfit, which shocked and concerned him. He quickly made a phone call, asking the person on the other end to check the mark he had just sent. Half an hour later, Ro received a call from the same person, who asked if he had found anything useful. Ro asked the caller to skip the small talk and get straight to the point, clearly in a hurry. The other person confirmed that the mark belonged to an A-rank explorer who had been confirmed dead last August. He explained that the explorer hadn't died inside the cave, but was found murdered near the entrance of an A-rank dungeon. He added that the corpse had been in a horrific state, and the killer was still unknown. The caller then asked Ro sharply where he had seen the mark, and Ro calmly replied by questioning why it mattered so much. The caller explained that the mark was dangerous and signified plunder, warning Ro to stay away immediately if he ever saw it again. Ro responded with confusion, asking what exactly he meant by spoils of war, prompting the caller to scold him for pretending to be ignorant. Ro looked out the window and noticed that the masked man had vanished from the battle scene, wondering if he had escaped. Ro asked the caller if he had any additional information on the matter, and the other person sarcastically replied that he should ask more politely next time if he wanted answers. The caller continued his conversation with Ro jokingly, telling him that if he asked nicely, he might share the information he wanted. Ro immediately agreed, seriously and politely requesting the information. The caller began explaining that taking another person's emblem or symbol as a war trophy was a ridiculous custom. He then clarified that the only group known to do this was an organization called Cruz. Ro was surprised upon hearing the name of the group, saying, "That strange organization? I've heard of them." The man turned toward him in shock and asked if he really knew them. Ro confirmed that Nana had mentioned the organization to him before. The man then explained to Ro that Cruz was an international group with a complex structure. Although they were eccentric, they had strong internal unity. He began to grow nervous and warned Ro not to investigate them on his own, hinting that there was no one left to protect him like before. Ro interrupted him seriously, asking what exactly he knew and demanding that he not lie to him. The man explained that news of Nana's death had already begun to spread in certain circles and might soon be publicly announced. Ro asked him where he got that information, and the man hesitated before answering. He looked at a card in front of him and said the source was Daisy Trading Company. He added that Daisy dealt in information, but wasn't shady enough to sell something like that publicly, and that he had only gotten the info after pressuring the company's president. Ro thanked him and asked him to continue gathering intel, but to be careful. Then the man asked what Ro planned to do next. Ro calmly replied that he would leave if Nana's death started becoming widely known. The man was surprised by Ro's composure in the face of such a serious situation. Ro sadly recalled that he had been preparing for this moment ever since he began suspecting someone had leaked the news of Nana's death. He hadn't expected the association to cover it up this thoroughly, and expressed relief that he hadn't been used as bait in the matter. Otherwise, things would have been much worse. Later, Ro was shown in an intense training session with automated combat machines, expertly blocking their strikes. He skillfully dodged and launched several precise counterattacks. He was even able to keep up with 2 training bots at once. The training battle suddenly came to a halt, and Ro stood puzzled in front of the machines that had stopped moving unexpectedly. His trainer, Charlie, clapped from a distance and told Ro that he had improved significantly and was now far more precise than before. Ro thanked his trainer, saying it was all thanks to his training, to which Charlie humbly replied that he hadn't taught him that much yet. Charlie added that Ro had only trained a few times so far. He noted that Ro's physical development had progressed at an extraordinary and unnatural rate in such a short time, which sparked his curiosity. Charlie assured him not to worry, and that he wouldn't ask what had happened, out of respect for his privacy, but admitted he was curious about the real reason for Ro's visit today. He emphasized that he was certain Ro hadn't come just to train, saying, "You're not that dumb." Charlie continued, explaining that he had already told Ro to pay close attention, and that the reason for this visit likely had to do with Kazami Shun, who had nearly caused a disaster recently. Charlie sat down and asked Ro to sit as well, preparing to talk with him about the details of the situation. Charlie began by explaining that Kazami Shun nearly caused the destruction of the entire city of Mikio. Ro was surprised and asked in shock what exactly had happened. Charlie responded that although Kazami appeared calm, he became extremely dangerous if he lost control, and that his recent fight with the man in the white cloak was just a minor incident for someone like him. Charlie lit his lighter and continued, saying that the man in the white cloak was incredibly powerful and was the only one who had ever pushed Kazami to such a level of fury. The two of them sat facing the sunset, and Charlie continued explaining that Kazami was known as the strongest among the 7 stars, but only when not restrained. Charlie revealed another truth to Ro. Kazami was the only one among the 7 stars whose power was sealed, because if he were left completely free, he would become a mass-killing machine. Ro recalled how it had previously been said that Nana was considered the strongest of the 7 stars according to official records, but the truth known to everyone was that Kazami was actually the strongest. Charlie asked Ro if that was what he had come to hear, but Ro denied it and asked why he was telling him all this. Charlie said he thought Ro wanted to know about the man in the white cloak. Ro confirmed he did want to know his identity. Charlie cautiously replied that he could tell him, but only if he had a good reason. Ro stated clearly that he knew Nana didn't die in the cave, and that they must have known that for a long time, asking if that was a good enough reason. Charlie hesitated, then admitted it was true and confirmed Ro's words, adding that they had planned to use Ro as bait to lure out the man in the white cloak, and questioned why Ro wouldn't just walk away from this whole matter. Ro accused him of trying to keep him away from the truth all along. Charlie looked at Ro seriously and told him that once he stepped into this, there would be no turning back, and the chance of dying was high. He also emphasized that it went against the Radiant Light's wishes, and asked if Ro was truly determined to know the details. Charlie began explaining that the man in the white cloak was once a member of a Japanese team that got into a conflict with a mysterious group known as the Saints, and that the 7 Stars organization was now selecting a new member to replace Nana. Ro was stunned when he heard that. Charlie sarcastically wondered if they intended to choose a rookie so quickly just because of the threat posed by the Saints. He explained that the true goals of the man in the white cloak weren't entirely clear, but it seemed he was either targeting all explorers or the 7 Stars specifically. Ro questioned how they didn't know much about the man's past and only had his codename. Charlie replied that the man was always muttering strange things, like typical villains do. Ro joked that maybe he belonged to some cult that worshipped a mysterious god. Charlie commented that in every era, strange people like him show up. Ro angrily asked if they were really going to choose a replacement for Nana that easily. Charlie responded that he wasn't stupid enough to think that, and pointed out that Ro was emotionally attached to his sister and could lose control at any moment. Ro firmly declared that Nana wasn't just the Radiant Light to him, she was also his little sister. Charlie smiled, impressed by Ro's response, and said that was exactly what he expected from his student. He praised him, saying it was better than being just a brother obsessed with his sister. Charlie then spoke seriously, saying that the 7 Stars were the nation's primary shield and spear, and if the news of Nana's death became official, chaos would spread across the country. Then Charlie shocked Ro by saying, "That's why, I'm sorry, Ro." Ro looked at him in disbelief, shocked, only for Charlie to interrupt and confirm that this was their only option. Ro replied angrily and with determination that they would have had to tell him eventually. He added that while the country might fall into chaos if Nana's death was revealed, they could no longer hide the truth. Ro realized with certainty that they intended to appoint a new member to replace Nana in the 7 Stars, and turn the news of her death into a public lie. He stormed out in anger, sarcastically saying it was a very well-planned strategy. Charlie told Ro that the date of the Explorers Tournament had been moved up because several nations had formed alliances and started targeting him specifically. Ro responded coldly, pointing out that there was no need to pretend to care about his opinion since they had already made the decision. Ro walked away while Charlie placed a hand on his head in frustration, saying he hated situations like this. After a while, Ro arrived at a remote location in the mountains to train alone. He began moving toward the forest, thinking that he couldn't return to the association right now and that solo training was all he could rely on. Ro stopped for a moment, looking at a map in his hand, and said he had paid a large sum for this information, hoping it wouldn't let him down. He continued toward the entrance of a cave that appeared ahead, praising the Daisy Trading Company for finding such a secluded and hidden entry point. Ro entered the cave, which revealed a stunning watery scene inside, but it was strange and filled with danger. He moved quickly, leaping over the stones scattered across the water. Suddenly, a massive creature resembling a giant shark emerged from beneath the water and charged at Ro. Ro felt frustrated. He had hoped to train peacefully here, but grumbled that his luck was terrible. He began running and moving rapidly between the rocks to avoid the monster's attacks. The giant shark continued its aggressive assault, forcing Ro to dodge swiftly and cautiously. Ro launched a powerful strike directly at the monster, using all his strength. He landed on the water, furious, complaining about the annoying fish he had encountered for the first time. But the problem didn't end there. A large group of similar sea monsters suddenly surrounded him from all sides. Ro began thinking quickly about how to handle such a large number of aggressive aquatic creatures. Then he charged at them one by one, delivering fast and decisive blows. After the battle ended, Ro stood exhausted on the shore, telling himself it was a good thing that amphibians didn't appear in E-rank caves, or he wouldn't have been able to handle it. But suddenly, the water around him surged with tremendous force, making him uneasy. Another group of massive amphibious monsters appeared before him, looking even more dangerous than the previous ones. Ro felt deeply frustrated by the continuous emergence of these creatures and sarcastically commented that they must be joking with him. Ro finally managed to eliminate all the monsters, then sat down, drained, saying that if he had been pulled underwater, he would have been dead. After defeating the monsters, Ro obtained several rare materials and components, such as two-legged fish meat and scales. He also acquired a strange and rare item that looked like a special pearl from the aquatic beasts. Ro looked at the pearl, puzzled by its odd appearance, and joked that some say it's good for the skin, but he found it disgusting. He left the area thinking that getting 2 pearls from all those monsters wasn't bad, and that it matched his expectations. He continued onward until he reached a deep area inside the cave, where a major confrontation awaited him. He stopped when he saw that the cave's main boss was a beautiful butterfly with a brilliant blue color. Despite its stunning appearance, Ro noticed that the butterfly released powder from its wings that could cause hallucinations, realizing that the real danger lay in its poison. Ro threw his sword forcefully at the flower the butterfly was perched on, saying he'd try to lure it out first. The sword struck the butterfly directly, killing it instantly. Ro was surprised to see a golden stone drop from the butterfly after its death. He wondered aloud whether the butterfly had just been a decoy, while the real danger was the swarm of fish. He successfully broke the golden stone with his knife and told himself that today might actually be his lucky day. Ro stood beside the butterfly's corpse, saying to himself that if the main monster had been real, he might have died in that fight. Suddenly, a notification appeared before him stating he had acquired the item Lucky Shell, and that one day he would experience an unexpected encounter. Sometime later, Ro was shown training, running outdoors. Koji called out to him and waved in a friendly greeting. Ro returned the greeting and asked whether he needed something or was just visiting. Koji told him he had come because he wanted to introduce him to a reliable team, praising how much stronger Ro was getting each day. Ro thanked him sincerely, and Koji said he'd send him the contact information later. But then Koji suddenly asked seriously why Ro was collecting the corpses of cave bosses. Ro remembered that ever since the pattern of cave appearances had changed, no one had been selling them anymore, and he had been asking Koji to help him find someone who would sell boss corpses. Koji continued, explaining that he'd been helping Ro a lot, so he at least wanted some clarity about his relationship with Nana-chan. Koji explained that there was a rumor going around that something bad had happened to Nana, and that everyone was panicking because of the cave pattern changes. Ro responded with a calm smile and told him not to worry, assuring him that Nana would finish her mission soon, and suggested they eat together when she returned. Koji quickly changed the subject and asked Ro where he had been lately. Ro replied that he had been in isolation doing intense training. Ro recalled his intense cave training and monster encounters, smiling quietly to himself. Koji joked that Ro looked stronger and more fit now, then said goodbye, mentioning he had other things to do. Koji left, and Ro stood silently, watching him go. Ro wondered seriously to himself whether he would be able to reclaim the title of the Radiant Light if he became stronger. Later, Ro appeared inside a building, sitting quietly as he waited, until a nervous, anxious-looking girl approached him. Kazami arrived and asked Ro if he'd been waiting long. Ro welcomed him back. Kazami replied excitedly that it hadn't been long, just about 10 days, and praised Ro, saying he was truly amazing. He asked Ro if he would let him in, but Ro clearly refused and told him to leave. Kazami was delighted that Ro considered him a teammate, while Ro coldly asked if he was always this friendly with everyone. Ro told Kazami that he had thought about his proposal, and added that he would decline if the place Kazami wanted to go was a cave. Kazami felt disappointed when Ro said he wasn't as strong as Kazami thought, and if Kazami didn't understand that, then there was no point in talking. Kazami anxiously asked what he should do, and Ro firmly responded that it wasn't about trusting him. It was about Kazami's ability to complete the mission. Kazami then asked how they could work together. Ro responded and agreed with Kazami to sell something of his over a long period, with Ro receiving 70% and Kazami 30%, under the condition that Kazami not tell anyone Ro was involved. Kazami immediately agreed with enthusiasm, saying he was good at business. He offered to help Ro plan his training, but quickly backed off, saying maybe he wasn't needed since Ro was the brother of a 7-star. Ro was surprised by Kazami's reaction when he suddenly got very close to him, full of excitement, insisting that he genuinely wanted to help. But Ro gently pushed Kazami away and told him he was busy at the moment and needed him to leave immediately. Before leaving, Kazami gave Ro his number and told him he'd be waiting for his message to discuss the details later. Kazami walked out of the house, waving goodbye to Ro, and once again saying he'd be waiting for his message. 7 days later, Ro was on his way to a remote rural location, explaining that the cave information he received from Daisy Trading Company was now mostly concentrated in rural areas. He drove toward an isolated area where he had purchased information about 3 E-rank caves, all located very far apart from each other. Ro explained that due to the shift in cave patterns, Daisy was now selling fewer caves, which made getting one in a good location very rare. He arrived at his destination and told himself he hadn't gotten any good answers before leaving, but he hoped for good news from Kazami's younger brother. Upon reaching the cave entrance, Ro was surprised when a large glowing gate suddenly appeared. As soon as he entered the cave, he was attacked by a massive snake, but managed to fend it off skillfully. After killing the snake, Ro wondered why such a creature would be at a cave entrance, noting that animals typically avoid caves. Ro felt uneasy and questioned whether this was due to the cave pattern changes, thinking things might be getting worse, and decided to hurry. At that moment, Ro entered the gate that had appeared deep within the cave. He walked quietly through a bamboo forest inside the cave after stepping through the gate. He noticed that the scenery inside the cave looked very similar to the real world, though time seemed to flow differently than outside. Suddenly, Ro was ambushed by another snake and suffered a minor injury. He quickly regained his balance and dodged another strike from the snake. Ro began striking down multiple snakes in a row with strong direct attacks. He delivered a finishing blow that knocked a snake to the ground as it hissed angrily. Ro realized the number of monsters was increasing rapidly, and he was in serious trouble. He stopped, feeling that things were spiraling out of control. Ro stood, surrounded by a massive number of monsters on all sides, saying the situation had gone far beyond what was reasonable. He left the area feeling frustrated that he missed out on many valuable materials he could have collected from the monsters. Suddenly, Ro spotted a strange figure running quickly inside the cave, surprising him. Ro was shocked to realize the person he saw was a humanoid monster and wondered why such a rare type of creature would appear in an E-rank cave. The humanoid monster appeared, holding a book, and asked aloud in confusion what was going on around him. The monster looked at Ro and asked if they had met before. Ro cautiously wondered to himself whether this was truly a monster or a new feature in the cave system, especially since he hadn't received any notifications about it. Ro recalled that Nana had once told him about monsters that ask questions, and that the strength of such monsters changes depending on whether the answer is right or wrong. The humanoid monster appeared in front of Ro and said with little interest that he was confused. He wanted to watch 4 movies but could only pick one. The monster asked Ro which of the 4 movies he thought was the best. Ro felt confused and wondered what the monster was trying to do, especially since it hadn't shown any aggression, and he couldn't gauge its strength. He thought to himself that he could barely defeat an E-rank cave boss, so he stood no chance against this creature. Ro approached the monster and suggested watching all 4 movies. The monster replied, adding that good things should be enjoyed slowly. Then Ro asked what kind of movies he liked. The monster responded with great joy that he loved all kinds of movies without exception. Ro suggested using a die to decide, which made the monster ask curiously, "A die?" Ro showed him the die with a confident smile, saying this was the only way if he loved all the movies and couldn't choose. The monster asked with interest how to use the die, while Ro thought to himself that he had no information on this creature, and there was no way he could win in a fight. Ro decided his best option for now was to go along with the monster's request, then rolled the die on the ground. The monster was extremely happy when the result matched the movie he had really wanted to watch, surprising Ro, who remembered the monster initially wanted to watch all of them. The monster started watching the chosen film with pure joy, while Ro stood next to him, confused. Ro suddenly and cautiously approached the monster, staying alert and ready. The monster noticed Ro's strange movements and asked what was going on. Ro replied that it was nothing, then curiously asked what the monster was doing now. The monster calmly replied that he was choosing a gift for him, which shocked and puzzled Ro. The monster opened a strange book and started flipping through its pages, then asked Ro what kind of gift he wanted. The monster chose something from the book and said he would grant him this gift. A bright golden light emerged from the book and turned into a beautiful pocket watch. The monster handed the watch to Ro with a smile, saying that there were good humans too, but no one believed that. The monster wished to meet Ro again and disappeared through a magical portal. Ro stood amazed and said to himself how strange it was for a monster to give gifts to humans. He examined the pocket watch he had received and discovered that it was a special item that allowed him to view status and could protect him from one fatal attack. Ro thought deeply and said this monster was without a doubt one of the most dangerous types of humanoid monsters, yet their conversation had been innocent. He wondered to himself who this mysterious creature was that would offer such a rare gift so easily. Elsewhere in the capital, inside the Seiyo Arena, the Explorers Tournament was taking place. A certain man appeared, yawning with extreme boredom. He was watching the matches and complaining about how many rookies were in the arena, wondering why he was even there. He suddenly received a phone call, which made him worry that he was about to be scolded again. He noticed he had 9 missed calls and became certain he was definitely about to get yelled at. He answered the call, and the person on the other end sharply asked where he was right now. The person on the phone replied that he was at the arena watching the rookie matches, then asked Ro directly how much he knew about the humanoid monsters that appear in caves. The man was surprised by the question and responded, puzzled, asking if Ro had actually met one. Ro simply asked him to share whatever he knew. The person explained to Ro that he was asking the wrong guy, because encountering humanoid monsters was extremely rare. He added that even members of the 7 Stars barely came across them, and mentioned reading about such creatures in the cave diaries. He went on to explain that cave diaries are very rare items that contain highly accurate information about the cave, and that what is written in them is remarkably precise and reflects human desires. Ro told him that the humanoid monster he met today had been extremely friendly and showed no intent to attack. The man asked anxiously if he had killed it. Ro was confused and asked if that would be a problem. The other man responded in shock, saying it would be a huge loss if his guess was right, because Ro may have encountered Ritias. He then explained that Ritias was a mysterious humanoid monster whose personal data appears to no one, and that anyone who meets him receives rare items. He shared an example of someone who met him 5 years ago and received an item that could stop time for 3 seconds. Ro asked whether this kind of information shouldn't be publicly known. During the call, the man suddenly heard noise around him and paused for a moment. Ro asked what was happening, and the man replied that it was just some rookies acting chaotic. He didn't understand why something as important as choosing explorers was handled this way. Ro asked in surprise if he meant the Explorer Selection Tournament, saying he was familiar with it. At that moment, Ro inspected the pocket watch he had received and discovered it displayed his personal status, just like in video games. Ro was confused and wondered about the strange display of the watch, which resembled a game interface. The man on the phone continued, explaining to Ro that he had been asked to provide security at the event, even though some members of the 7 Stars were already present, which surprised Ro. Ro asked if all the 7 Stars members were there. The man replied that only Fischl and North were currently present. Fischl and North were sitting in the arena, watching the matches with obvious disdain. The man commented sarcastically that if someone asked Fischl to choose from among these weaklings, he'd probably be angry too. A problem suddenly broke out in the arena, prompting the man to say he had to go stop Fischl before he caused more trouble. He hung up and stood still for a moment, visibly annoyed. He suddenly remembered that he hadn't told Ro why information about Retius wasn't widely known, that spreading such details would cause massive public misunderstanding. He finished his thought to himself, saying that Ro would probably be fine. Later that evening, the headquarters of the Explorers Association appeared dimly lit. Inside, Association President Jogasaki Kai was sitting with another person and said he'd end the call now because he had some work to do. Kai wrote some notes on a paper in front of him, while Charlie asked angrily if he hadn't finished yet. Kai looked at him calmly and asked if he could just wait a little longer. Charlie grew angry and said it had already been 2 hours since he was summoned, mocking how Fischl always showed up late and never got scolded. Fischl responded angrily, saying he was late due to important matters, but Charlie ignored him completely. The president stepped in and asked Fischl to train the selected candidates, and asked Charlie to investigate a certain matter. Fischl and Charlie immediately refused, saying firmly that they didn't want to do it. The president asked why they were refusing. Fischl mocked that training these weaklings would be a waste of time since they'd probably die anyway, but at least that would be better than losing in the tournament. The president of the association asked Charlie what he intended to do, and Charlie replied angrily and wearily that he had neither the time nor the desire. He just wanted to go home and take a break. Kai looked at his phone calmly and silently, not immediately responding to Charlie's request. Then he smiled and told Charlie that he had arranged things 3 days ago, which annoyed Charlie, who repeated his request for a vacation. But the president's expression suddenly changed. In a cold and serious tone, he told him it was an order. Fischl, mocking as he left the office, said that if it were truly an order, it should come from Alpha, not from the president of the association. After Fischl left, Kai sighed and asked Charlie to select some weak candidates and train them. Charlie asked the president in disbelief if he was actually serious about this request. The president smiled and slyly asked Charlie if he was stupid, or if there was another reason he was refusing. He added that he was also curious about who had sent Charlie the information about Litias. Charlie grumbled, but agreed to do it. The president explained that he needed Charlie's instincts and strength, and asked him to achieve good results. Elsewhere, a short while later, Ro was seen training in a luxurious villa with vast gardens, accompanied by someone else. Ro asked Kazami in surprise if he had never trained before, since he looked completely exhausted. Kazami replied with difficulty that he runs daily. Ro sarcastically asked how far he runs. Kazami, smiling, replied that it was just a few thousand steps. Ro advised him to stop training altogether and just live a peaceful life. Kazami explained to Ro that he had suffered from a serious illness since childhood, which had made his body extremely weak. Ro asked if there was no complete cure for the illness, and Kazami replied that he hadn't been avoiding the issue. He had done everything he could. He added that he had summoned many explorers specialized in healing, but none had been able to cure him. Ro then asked if using cave resources was an option. Kazami explained that obtaining things from caves depends on luck, and only very important people are able to get them, and it's rare for anyone to even admit they possess such things. Suddenly, Ro remembered the humanoid monster Letias, and Kazami asked him if he knew anything about him. Ro said no and asked if he was some kind of special monster. Kazami replied that apparently Letias had once met Alpha. He went on to explain that for some reason, Alpha didn't fight Letias, but just talked with him, and that Alpha's legendary weapon had actually been a gift from Letias. Ro asked in disbelief if there really was a monster that kind. Kazami answered that it seemed so, and said there were people who met Letias afterward, and found that he either gave rare items or made fair trades. Ro wondered why Charlie hadn't mentioned anything about fair trades, and thought that maybe the whole matter had been deliberately hidden from him. Kazami asked Ro if he was okay. Ro replied that he'd like to borrow the villa for a while, if Kazami didn't mind. Kazami agreed instantly without hesitation, then asked if Ro planned to train alone. Ro said yes, explaining to himself that he didn't want to owe the association, or anyone else, for acquiring resources. He continued thinking that he also wanted to avoid touching or using anything that belonged to his sister, Nana, as much as possible. Half a month later, Ro was seen walking inside a large building. He stopped in front of a door and hesitated briefly before entering. Suddenly, a spear was hurled at him with great force, causing him to react quickly and dodge it just in time. Fischl von Mistos sat on a chair in the room, holding a photo while addressing Ro with a mocking tone. Ro asked furiously if this was how members of the 7 Stars welcomed others. Fischl held up the photo in front of Ro and sarcastically called him Nana's useless brother. Ro shouted in anger, demanding the photo back, but Fischl mocked him even more and asked if he was angry. Ro approached him aggressively, saying that the photo was his and demanded it be returned immediately. Fischl responded defiantly, "What if I refuse?" Ro tried to punch Fischl quickly, but Fischl caught his hand with ease, mocking him and calling him weak. Fischl smirked arrogantly and told him not to be so full of himself as he effortlessly blocked the attack. Ro fell hard to the ground, overwhelmed with pain and tension. Fischl suddenly exploded in anger, yelling in Ro's face that he hadn't even visited Nana's grave once and didn't deserve to be her brother. Ro suddenly recalled Nana's words when she asked him to spend her next birthday with her at home. A deep pain struck Ro's chest, and he was filled with sorrow as he remembered her request, unable to respond. Suddenly, Ro stood up and launched a powerful punch toward Fischl. Fischl was caught off guard by Ro's sudden strike and couldn't react in time. The two clashed violently, and the photo slipped from Fischl's hand. Ro managed to land a direct punch on Fischl's face, and it seemed he had taken control of the situation. But Fischl quickly blocked another attack from Ro. Fischl began a counterattack, appearing highly alert and ready. Ro surprised Fischl with a strong, sudden kick that threw him slightly off balance. Ro grabbed the photo that was about to hit the ground and furiously asked Fischl who he thought he was, declaring that he wouldn't let him deny his right to be Nana's brother. With a sharp and determined glare, Ro ordered Fischl to leave his house immediately. Fischl responded with intense sarcasm, recalling the last time he saw Ro struggling just to climb the stairs. He remembered how he used to mock Ro in the past, saying he might die just from climbing stairs. Fischl shouted in anger, asking Ro who he thought he was to become strong only after Nana's death. He continued bitterly, saying everyone called Nana foolish for continuing to support a brother like Ro, accusing him of emotionally manipulating her. Fischl stepped toward Ro aggressively, saying he was the one who had fought and risked his life beside Nana ever since she joined the Seven Stars, and that he had the right to say these things. Ro sat in silence, visibly affected by Fischl's words. He sat on the floor, exhausted, quietly listening as Fischl said he had always been by her side, except on the day she died. Fischl stopped in front of a wall filled with photos of Nana and said sadly that if he had been there that day, Nana wouldn't have died. He said it had been his duty to protect her. Looking at the photos with deep sorrow, he asked why it had to happen on that specific day. Ro turned to him and calmly asked why he hadn't been there that day. Fischl replied that Nana always used to say her older brother was the kindest person in the world to her. Fischl mocked Ro, saying it seemed his sister Nana never knew how cold he truly was. Ro responded angrily, telling him he had no right to interfere in their relationship as siblings. Then he demanded an explanation for why Fischl hadn't been there that day, or to just leave immediately. Fischl replied indifferently, questioning what good it would do to tell him. Was Ro planning to avenge Nana or something? Ro firmly answered that he didn't believe Nana had simply sacrificed herself. Fischl was stunned by Ro's words and sharply asked what he meant. Ro explained that Nana had a special item that allowed her to escape instantly from the dungeon. Fischl snapped back, insisting that Nana would never use that item. Ro replied with a sharp look, saying that either she didn't want to use it or she couldn't due to the strict conditions of such items. He continued speaking as he stood in front of a picture of Nana. He stated that someone must have deliberately made her unable to use the item, adding that he knew Nana's personality well. She would never leave her teammates behind and escape alone. Fischl responded firmly, with full confidence, that there was no traitor on Nana's team and that he would stake his life on it. Ro began explaining to Fischl what would happen if someone forcibly used a special item to enter a dungeon. The dungeon would become temporarily sealed, and the boss monster's power would be greatly amplified. Fischl continued quietly, saying that such a change could turn an otherwise easily defeatable monster into a serious threat. But the movements of the Seven Stars were extremely confidential. So, in that case, either there was a traitor, or the enemy's intel was incredibly accurate. Ro offered another possibility, that Nana had been in a situation where she couldn't use the escape item. Perhaps it was the kind of item that sealed the dungeon upon use and consumed all the oxygen within 3 minutes, and even destroying the dungeon core wouldn't allow escape without the emergency use item. Ro also proposed that Nana may have given her escape item to a teammate to help them. Fischl admitted that was possible, but pointed out that such items were extremely rare. Ro replied seriously that no matter how rare they were, they couldn't be more valuable than the life of a Seven Stars member. Fischl revealed to Ro that the real reason he hadn't been there that day was because he'd received a distress call from the son of a high-ranking official, a weak person who entered an A-rank dungeon far beyond his level. He added that he had investigated the matter afterward, but all he found was an abuse of authority. No evidence suggested the incident was a conspiracy against Nana. Fischl then asked Ro sharply why he was so sure Nana hadn't died in the battle. Ro calmly replied that she had promised she would come back, and she had never broken a promise in her life. Fischl gave a tired smile and said he was beginning to understand why Nana cared so much about her brother. Suddenly, Fischl pulled a red sword from its place on the wall. He handed the sword to Ro, explaining that it had belonged to Nana. Since she had 2 swords and one remained in the dungeon, he was giving this one back to Ro. Ro took the sword and quietly thanked Fischl. Fischl told Ro this was all he could do for him. Ro then asked if the rest of the team agreed with giving him the sword. Fischl angrily replied that he didn't need anyone's permission to return Nana's belongings to her family. He handed Ro a card and told him that with his current strength, he wouldn't even get close to the truth behind Nana's death. He added that he hadn't been serious in their earlier fight, and Ro shouldn't think he had actually beaten him. Ro thought to himself that if Fischl had truly been serious, he would have been knocked out in a single blow. Fischl said that currently combat resources were heavily monopolized, so he would look after Ro in Nana's place. Ro silently decided that he wanted to learn some sword techniques. He looked at the card Fischl had given him, which had the name and address of a sword instructor called Sho Fuha. As he was leaving, Fischl added that Nana's successor had already been chosen. Ro was surprised and asked directly who the successor was. Kazami apologized to Ro for being late and explained that a strange person had picked a fight with him on the way. Ro asked if he was hurt, and Kazami replied that he was unharmed today and had been lucky. He started telling Ro that a man with a knife had attacked pedestrians on Okawa Street, but luckily no one was killed. He added that the same man had deliberately hit him in Tensei Street before. Kazami asked in surprise why Ro didn't seem shocked at all. Ro responded that as long as dungeons exist, strange people will keep appearing. Kazami agreed, saying that surviving is tough, whether you're an explorer or just a regular person. Kazami apologized for talking about depressing things, then asked why Ro had suddenly called him. Ro replied that he needed a favor. He wanted to obtain self-controlled knives and matching equipment, and asked if Kazami knew anyone who could help. Kazami said that Daisy Trading Company might be able to help with the equipment, though it would take some effort. As for the self-controlled knives, that was more difficult, but he would ask Luand. Ro thanked him immediately, but Kazami asked him not to mention it. Then he changed the subject and told Ro he was thinking about forming a guild. Ro asked if his business wasn't going well. Kazami said not exactly, but he was attracting the wrong kind of attention. Ro told him he'd need at least 3 people to start a guild and asked if he had anyone specific in mind. Kazami asked Ro if he was interested in joining. Ro replied that he hated being in the spotlight. Kazami smiled and said he'd make sure no one noticed him, then asked, surprised, why Ro went to such lengths. As they were talking, breaking news appeared on the TV, catching Kazami's attention. He was shocked to see his older brother, who had left for the southern outskirts just 2 days ago. So when did he return? 2 other faces from the 7 stars appeared on the screen as well. Everyone in the cafe was shocked. One of the customers said it had been a long time since the 7 stars had gathered together. There were even rumors that Yoko had died. Kazami asked with concern if something serious had happened to make the 7 stars assemble. He then remembered what Fischl had said when leaving the room, that he couldn't reveal who would take Nana's place, but he could say it was the most pitiful and useless person among the council. He continued, telling Ro he wouldn't force anything on him, and even the 7 stars couldn't predict what would happen. He ended by saying he'd return to the capital soon. He paused, then told Ro not to worry. He'd find everything out from the news. And if he felt frustrated, he should become stronger. Strong enough to stand beside the 7 stars. Internally, Kazami commented bitterly about Ro's fate, saying he would end up despairing again from his weakness and lack of strength. Kazami told Ro not to be upset by the news. There are people like that in the world. Ro replied that he wasn't angry. Ro asked about Kazami's training. Kazami laughed and said he'd just been a little busy. Ro stood up and told Kazami he'd be away for a while starting tomorrow, and he'd contact him when he returned. Ro left the place, while Kazami wondered to himself whether Ro was truly upset by what he'd heard. Ro told himself sadly that of course he'd be angry if everyone kept repeating that his sister was dead. Sometime later, Ro went to his swordsmanship training grounds and heard people whispering in surprise that the instructor had accepted someone like him there. They wondered if he was really that strong. Then why had he been practicing only the basics for an entire month, even swinging his sword nearly 2,000 times a day? At that moment, Instructor Kamada arrived and asked Ro if he had finished already, noting that his body had clearly become tougher than before. Instructor Kamada asked Ro if he was dissatisfied with having practiced just sword swings for the past 2 weeks. Ro replied that he wasn't upset, because the instructor had explained things to him very clearly. He needed to learn and master the basics thoroughly, if he wanted to become skilled in sword arts. Kamada asked Ro if he was mocking him, and Ro replied that he was simply repeating Kamada's own words back to him. The instructor grumbled and told him to just continue practicing and focusing on the basics, then asked if he now wanted to begin real training. Ro was surprised by the sudden change and asked why the instructor was changing his words, after previously insisting he should train sword swings for at least a month. Kamada replied that he had thought Ro was just a spoiled rich kid trying to look cool. Instructor Kamada smiled at Ro and told him that if he had decided what he wanted to do, he should let him know right away. Ro responded with clear respect, saying he was eagerly looking forward to his guidance and teaching. The instructor silently reflected on something, his expression visibly serious. Then he told Ro that the pinnacle of swordsmanship lies in just one thing. He firmly grabbed a sword mounted on the wall, preparing to demonstrate something. Suddenly, he threw the sword at incredibly high speed toward Ro, who was visibly shocked by how fast it moved. Ro was stunned as he watched the sword's blinding speed and thought to himself, he's insanely fast. Instructor Kamada continued, explaining that speed is the key factor, adding that if someone is faster than their opponent, they can win even with only a few strikes. He then asked Ro to show him his fastest strike. As Ro prepared to attack, he thought to himself that he had always assumed sword fighting relied purely on physical strength. He launched his sword forward with great speed, putting all his strength into the attack. But Instructor Kamada blocked the strike easily with a light smile, saying it was a good blow with clear intent. Then he provoked him slightly, saying he wasn't too bad, for someone just throwing the sword around. Ro quietly admitted that he lacked sufficient strength, and realized that speed primarily comes from physical power. Kamada laughed and told Ro he was starting to understand well, then asked if he knew what the next step was. Ro, looking at the status screen that had appeared before him, thought he needed to allocate part of his training to boosting strength, not just focusing on sword skills. The instructor asked if Ro intended to follow the softness overcomes strength style. Ro replied that he wasn't aiming just for speed, he was aiming for balance and stability. Kamada replied that he didn't see any arrogance or worry in him, and that his thinking was solid, but he added with a sarcastic smile that he could smell something suspicious around him. Ro wondered to himself whether that was just the instinct of a swordsman, or something else entirely. Instructor Kamada told Ro that he hoped he would stay on the right path, and that he had high hopes for him. Ro thanked him. The instructor added that there was no need to thank him with words, but with action. He told him they should eat together sometime, then said he had to leave for work. Before going, he warned Ro that a wealthy young man had recently been looking for him, and advised him to hide for a few days if he didn't want trouble, until the guy gave up. Ro's face showed clear surprise and confusion after hearing this warning. Later, Ro entered an E-rank cave that looked dark and eerie. He faced many monsters inside the cave and fought them fiercely using his special red sword. After defeating the monsters, Ro gathered the drop materials, including mutated meat, a scorpion tail, and a crimson golden feather. Ro was surprised when he found a note about the meat he had collected. It said that it was highly toxic and technically edible, but causes instant death. Immediately afterward, a virtual message appeared, confirming that the dungeon core had been successfully destroyed. Ro stood there wondering why a note had appeared for something as simple as meat, when previously such notes only appeared for rare items and skills. Ro recalled that monster corpses couldn't be taken out of a dungeon. They could only be used inside. In the early days of dungeon appearances, when humanity lacked experience, skills, and equipment, raids were extremely difficult. Due to repeated shortages of resources, some people were forced to eat monster meat, which led to many explorers losing their lives. Ro left the dungeon, wondering why a note had appeared for monster meat even though everyone already knew it was poisonous. As he exited the dungeon, a notification window suddenly popped up informing him that his skill level had increased. At home, his phone rang. It was a call from Koji-san. Ro answered right after stepping out of the shower. Koji asked Ro if he was free the next day, saying he needed his help. Ro agreed immediately and told Koji to stay with his wife. He would take his place in the dungeon tomorrow. After the call ended, Ro looked at his phone, seeming anxious or tense. He stopped in front of a picture of his sister Nana, smiling softly as he remembered her. The next day, the explorer team gathered at the dungeon entrance, and Ro was there as well. One of the explorers welcomed Ro, saying he looked like he needed some rest and a hot meal. He quickly explained the rules of D-rank dungeons and advised Ro not to do anything extra, just observe and learn. The explorer pulled out his pocket watch and announced it was time to enter the dungeon. As soon as the team entered, they were immediately struck with surprise. The scene inside the dungeon was extremely strange. It looked like an alien environment, filled with wrecked spacecraft and red dust. One of the team members angrily asked what kind of bizarre dungeon this was. Another explorer warned that it was a hybrid-type dungeon, and any small mistake could be fatal. He explained that D-rank hybrid dungeons and above sometimes appear, combining 2 or more types of dungeon environments. Explorers generally hate these dungeons because they break the internal consistency of dungeon logic. Ro noticed that the monsters here were only robot type, and that the dungeon fusion wasn't fully complete yet. The team leader reassured everyone that there was no need to panic, and instructed the group to search for nearby resources. One team member reported that there was nothing to collect in this place. The leader suggested dismantling the rockets and vehicles to take parts, saying he refused to leave empty-handed. But another team member said the rockets were already empty, surprising everyone. The leader was puzzled and said to Ro that he didn't seem surprised. Ro replied that he had seen something similar online before, while thinking to himself that in incomplete hybrid dungeons, the only obtainable resources often come from the main boss. The leader decided they should leave this strange place quickly, assuming the main monster might have already been defeated. As they moved forward, they discovered that the main boss had, in fact, been defeated by someone else before they arrived. They were all stunned by this unexpected sight, and the other explorers appeared exhausted and drained. When the support-type explorers arrived, the adventurers asked them to begin collecting items, saying their timing was perfect. The leader of the adventurer team instructed one of them to destroy the boss's core after the materials had been collected. Ro observed the situation and noticed the place was full of people. If he tried to take anything, it would raise suspicion, but dungeon bosses like this were extremely rare. Then, suddenly, someone launched an attack on the adventurers. Everyone was shocked by this sudden and unexpected turn of events. A masked individual appeared and began attacking the explorers. One of the team members shouted Mita's name, pleading for him to stop, while the team leader said the masked man, Kaizuka, was on their side, and that Mita had once saved him. Kaizuka appeared mysteriously, wearing a purple hooded cloak, and coldly said that he had repaid the favor by putting Mita out of his suffering. Mita's lifeless body could be seen behind him. The team leader charged at the mysterious figure in anger, shouting that he wasn't the Kaizuka he knew, and demanded to know his true identity. Kaizuka easily dodged the attack and smirked mockingly as he did. He then swiftly dashed toward the leader and struck him hard from behind, knocking him to the ground. The leader's weapon flew into the air. Kaizuka grabbed his mask and removed it, saying sarcastically that his name didn't matter. He simply referred to himself as Number 19. One of the team members was shocked upon hearing Number 19 and immediately realized that the man was part of an organization known as Abyss. Number 19 praised their recognition of the group with clear mockery. The explorer team leader decided to face him head-on and told the others to go destroy the dungeon core, saying he had promised Koji he would protect Ro. He added that if he died, he wouldn't be able to face Koji again. Ro anxiously asked about the leader's own safety. The leader answered calmly and confidently, saying he was the leader. It was his duty to protect his team, no matter the cost. A short while later, Number 19 was seen standing amidst the corpses of other team members, and he sarcastically said he had completely forgotten about the leader. The team leader shouted and charged at Number 19, telling the others to use the opportunity to escape immediately. Number 19 smiled coldly and described the attack as brave. He then added with clear contempt that this kind of bravery made him feel sick. He raised his sword, preparing to kill the leader, who stood helplessly before him. The leader's face showed panic and fear as he saw Number 19's sword drawing closer. Suddenly, Ro intercepted the strike with his sword, saving the team leader at the last second. Number 19 smirked in surprise and mockingly said that it seemed there was some decent trash in the team after all. Ro told the leader to take everyone and hide immediately. Number 19 began sarcastically stretching, wondering aloud if Ro was the type to let his enemy warm up before a fight. Ro calmly asked if he really was from the Abyss organization, and number 19 confirmed it. Ro doubted him internally, and thought to himself that something didn't add up about number 19's behavior. He recalled that Abyss was made up entirely of merciless criminals, and for them, killing people was just a casual hobby. Suddenly Ro remembered Nana, and his face filled with anger toward number 19. The two began exchanging powerful strikes, their swords clashing violently. Number 19 said it was rude of Ro to ignore him just because he didn't use surprise attacks. The two glared at each other in a silent standoff, before number 19 insulted Ro, calling him a filthy insect. From a distance, the rest of the team watched the battle, and one of them commented in amazement that the person fighting number 19 was incredibly strong. He added in disbelief that he couldn't understand why someone with such power had been in the backlines. The leader responded seriously that they should use this chance to destroy the core as fast as possible. They couldn't rely on a rookie for long. Number 19 lunged at Ro, drawing his sword to strike. The force of the motion caused Ro to be pushed forward without being touched. Ro tried to kick him in the face, taking advantage of the momentum, but number 19 quickly raised his arm and blocked the kick. Ro quickly regained his balance and crouched, ready to fight again, eyes fixed on his opponent with sharp focus. The opponent smirked mockingly and told Ro he was better than expected, and that the fight had just become more entertaining. Ro responded with quiet confidence, saying that if he really knew himself as a villain, he should also know that villains who talk too much usually end up dead. Number 19 grinned with wicked sarcasm and replied that insects like Ro should stay crawling in the dirt. They both dashed toward each other and clashed violently with their swords. Meanwhile, the rest of the team finally reached the dungeon core and began destroying it quickly. They felt relieved as cracks began to form in the core, confirming they could now escape the dungeon. But they were suddenly terrified when the masked man dashed toward them at incredible speed. One of the team members shouted to his comrade, urging him to run immediately. Before number 19 could reach them, Ro reappeared from behind and launched a surprise attack. Number 19 counterattacked suddenly, but Ro dodged it easily and with exceptional speed. Number 19 was caught off guard by a deep wound in his shoulder caused by Ro's surprise strike, and he paused in pain and shock. Ro seized the opportunity, charged again, and delivered an extremely powerful strike. The blow hit the ground with such force that it caused a small explosion. Ro quickly turned to his teammates and ordered them to flee immediately. But the team leader shouted in panic and fear, trying to warn Ro to escape as well. The masked man appeared behind Ro suddenly and said in a low, mocking voice that Ro had been too quick to declare victory. Ro took a brutal hit from behind by the opponent's sword, leaving him seriously wounded. Number 19 was surprised when Ro managed to grab his sword despite the injury, and Ro told him that perhaps he was the one who had underestimated too much. Ro then used his strength to yank the masked man's sword and stabbed him directly in the body. A look of deep shock appeared on Ro's face when he realized number 19 hadn't been affected much at all. Instead, he smiled mockingly and said, "Too bad." At that moment, number 19 vanished suddenly from Ro's sight. He reappeared to stab one of the team members from behind, saying with sarcasm that it was lucky he didn't die instantly. The team leader collapsed to the ground, immediately losing consciousness. Ro finally realized with horror in his eyes that his opponent was using an extremely rare type of special ability. He remembered that explorer skills are divided into 8 main categories, each with its own subtypes. He explained internally that his own skill, which boosts the body, falls under the enhancement category. But his opponent was using a rare shadow manipulation skill, which allowed him to summon 2 clones with up to 70% of his original power, making Ro's chances of victory nearly impossible. Number 19 smirked mockingly and told Ro that he sure knew a lot. He continued speaking with evil excitement, declaring that the showtime was about to begin. He then provoked Ro by asking if he should keep only him alive, or everyone else too. The other team members fell to the ground in pain, begging Ro to run and save himself. The masked man gave Ro a strict 1-minute deadline to decide what he would do, threatening to kill his teammate if he didn't give a clear answer. Ro remained extremely tense and anxious as he stared at the open dungeon gate in front of him. The masked man warned Ro not to try anything stupid. He stepped closer and threatened him menacingly, saying he would be watching him closely. Ro started thinking deeply, overwhelmed by the thought that he still hadn't uncovered the truth behind his sister Nana's death. He repeated to himself that he couldn't die here. He was torn, wondering in despair what he should do in such a dangerous situation. Number 19 coldly announced that there were only 30 seconds left to decide. One of the team members tried to show bravery, saying weakly that they would be okay. The masked man was irritated by this and raised his sword, angrily saying their voices were as annoying as insects. He violently stabbed one of the team members, demanding that they be silent at once. The other team members screamed in terror and panic. Number 19 raised his sword again, preparing for another deadly blow, saying their noise was unbearable. Ro shouted at him to stop immediately. But the masked man coldly and harshly replied that he wasn't planning to hear anything except the answer he asked for. Ro firmly told him that he would stay behind and asked him to release the others. He mocked number 19 and taunted him, asking if he was scared to face him. The masked man drew his sword and pointed it at Ro, saying sarcastically that he had given him a chance to survive, but he wasted it foolishly. Ro responded confidently, saying he was only 10 meters from the dungeon exit and dared him to try. Number 19 stood holding one of the team members, mocking Ro for caring about others' lives more than his own. Ro replied with full confidence that if the man truly wanted to kill them, he wouldn't be able to stop him. And likewise, if Ro wanted to escape, the masked man couldn't stop him either. He explained that he had realized the masked man never intended to hurt anyone from the start, and that all of this was just a clone, not the real thing. The masked man was stunned by Ro's words when he exposed the truth, that a clone is just a clone. Furious, he exploded in rage and declared that he would kill Ro himself. Ro shouted for the rest of the team to escape immediately. The team rushed toward the dungeon gate in fear and panic, while Ro stood firm, protecting their retreat. The masked man stood before Ro and said with anger and menace that he wanted to see how long Ro could last against him now. Number 19 continued his ferocious assault on Ro, trying to strike him from behind with his sword, but Ro sensed the attack and prepared to dodge at the last moment. With a swift and powerful move, Ro managed to evade and deliver a counterattack toward his opponent. Ro's strike landed with surprising and tremendous force, wounding the masked man, who began bleeding noticeably. The intense battle continued between them as they exchanged attacks at lightning speed, with Ro desperately trying to exploit his opponent's weaknesses. But the masked man soon delivered a powerful kick that struck Ro directly, sending him flying violently. Ro winced in severe pain, the tension evident on his face from the direct blow. Even so, he quickly got back on his feet and barely dodged another incoming strike. Ro turned swiftly to see the masked man attempting to exploit another gap in his defense. He performed an impressive acrobatic maneuver to evade the attack and quickly create distance. Ro then dashed toward one of the masked man's clones and delivered a powerful kick, shattering it instantly. The masked man mocked Ro's attack, sarcastically asking if that was all he had. Ro charged again with great force and determination, delivering a decisive sword strike at his opponent. But number 19 smiled confidently and launched a direct and powerful overhead attack, saying, "This is the end." Ro took the full brunt of the masked man's blow, resulting in a serious wound to his body. The immense pain from the severe injury caused Ro to collapse to the ground. He staggered back, wounded, while the masked man advanced, preparing to deliver another fatal blow. Ro struggled to rise, his body covered in deep wounds, blood dripping onto the ground. From a distance, more clones summoned by the masked man appeared, worsening the situation drastically. Number 19 stepped closer and mockingly told Ro that it had been a long time since he'd felt this angry. Ro was struck again by an incredibly powerful blow from number 19, which smashed him into the wall with tremendous force. The masked man opened a mysterious portal behind Ro and smiled, saying he'd give him another chance because he was merciful, and if Ro went through it, he would let him go. He continued with an evil grin, telling Ro that if he came out alive, it would be a miracle. Ro, in immense pain and inner turmoil, began to think that he must survive, no matter what it took. In his mind, Ro saw an image of his sister Nana smiling and calling out to him, "Big brother." Suddenly, the masked man stomped harshly on Ro's back, causing him to scream in agony. The masked man burst out laughing, taunting Ro by saying he thought he wasn't afraid of death. He added mockingly that if Ro wanted to leave, the portal was right there. Nothing was stopping him from trying. Ro began crawling with great difficulty toward the portal, repeating weakly to himself that he had to live, no matter what it took. He continued dragging himself forward with all the strength he had left, his mind repeating that he must survive. He reached desperately toward the portal, his hand trembling in hope of escaping with his life. Number 19 said to Ro that he truly was greedy, before being interrupted by someone's voice from behind him. He was surprised when a strange girl asked him to move aside, speaking in a calm voice. He felt tense and cautious as he turned toward her, puzzled by her sudden appearance. The girl appeared extremely composed, showing no sign of fear, and calmly repeated that he should not block her path because she wanted to go home. The masked man mocked her, saying, "Did I miss cleaning up one of the bugs?" She simply replied, "She's not a bug," and asked him to move again. Number 19 replied with sarcasm, saying he would move if she could kill him. The girl, puzzled by his response, replied with a hint of sarcasm, asking if that was really all he was demanding. The masked man coldly repeated that if she wanted to leave, she would have to kill him first. The girl felt annoyed and described the masked man as a pervert for his strange demand. The masked man laughed loudly and mockingly, saying, "Yes, I am." But suddenly, and with astonishing speed, the masked man's head was severed from his body, blood spraying into the air. Ro was utterly shocked when he witnessed the horrifying scene. The girl calmly approached the wounded Ro and asked in a soft tone whether she had to kill him too in order to leave. But Ro gently replied that he had no intention of blocking her path at all. Then Ro sat down on the ground, clearly exhausted and worn out, while the young girl looked at him, confused by his response. She asked him in surprise why he wasn't moving yet. He replied hesitantly that he was fine. She asked again, puzzled, why he remained in place. Ro responded with difficulty and fatigue that it was nothing important. Then Ro thanked her for saving him, but the girl quietly denied helping him. Ro kindly asked for her name. The girl smiled and introduced herself as Konatsu, cheerfully adding that everyone who asks her name usually buys her food, and asked if he would buy her a meal too. Ro gently agreed but asked if she would let him go home first. Konatsu happily shouted, "Meat!" with great excitement as she exited the dungeon with Ro. They went straight to a steak restaurant, where Konatsu began eating with great appetite and joy, astonishing Ro. Ro ordered more meat for Konatsu, but the waitress apologized, saying they had run out of steak. Ro then requested any other type of meat instead, asking for a large amount, enough for 5 or even 10 meals. The waitress brought out a large plate of grilled meat, which looked delicious and incredibly appetizing. Konatsu's eyes sparkled with joy as she saw the meat in front of her. She began eating enthusiastically, while the waitress watched in amazement, and Ro looked at her with a gentle smile. Meanwhile, Ro began coughing severely, showing signs that he was still suffering from his injuries. Konatsu innocently asked why he didn't go to the hospital, since he looked like he was about to die. Rose suddenly recalled the first time he met Nana, how her expression resembled Konatsu's when she was hungry, even though she never said it directly. He remembered that first encounter with Nana, when she sat on the floor in a dark room, staring at him with big, sorrowful eyes. Rose smiled sadly at Konatsu, and quietly told her that she had something on her face. Then he wondered to himself if Konatsu was a good girl like Nana had been back then. A large, muscular man arrived, accompanying the young girl Konatsu. He told her she had taken too long, and that he'd started to think she'd been tricked again. After seeing all the food Ro had brought, the man commented that if this was the result, he wouldn't mind her being tricked again. Ro asked him curiously who he was. The man simply replied that he belonged to an organization called Kyoka, and that his name was registered as Okamo. Ro was surprised. He remembered that Kyoka was that strange special unit affiliated with the Explorers Association. He then invited Okamo to sit down and eat with them. Okamo agreed immediately without hesitation, which made the man very happy. Okamo sat with Konatsu, and the two of them began eating enthusiastically and joyfully. The little girl Konatsu asked in annoyance if Okamo was planning to eat her food too. Okamo replied that they should eat together, and added that this kind young man would order more if it ran out. Ro shyly and nervously agreed, telling them to order whatever they wanted. Okamo asked the waitress for 10 additional meals at once. Ro thought to himself, with some relief, that it was a good thing he had enough money. After the meal, Okamo looked very satisfied and said it had been a long time since he'd eaten until he was full. Konatsu agreed with him. The man then asked Ro for his name. Ro replied, while sarcastically wondering to himself if Kyoka was just a group of food fighters. As soon as Okamo heard Ro's name, he was clearly surprised and said he knew who he was. He was quite famous in their circles as the brother of Yoko. Ro asked in surprise if Okamo knew Nana. Okamo replied that no one didn't know her. She used to appear on TV all the time. Ro felt a bit tense when the past was brought up, while Konatsu, looking tired, said she was late and needed to go home. Okamo gently lifted Konatsu in his arms and asked Ro if he wanted to come with them, but Ro politely declined, saying he would also head home. Before leaving, Okamo seriously advised Ro to be careful, but not to overdo it, or else he'd end up always alone. As he departed carrying Konatsu, he added that he wouldn't interfere in Ro's personal affairs, but he was welcome to visit any time if he wanted. At sunset, Okamo and Konatsu headed toward a large abandoned building. But they weren't alone. Ro had decided in the end to go with them to the place. As they entered the building, a pink-haired girl greeted them enthusiastically, immediately jumping up when she saw the food bag Okamo had brought. Okamo tossed the bag filled with meat toward her. She threw herself at the food with great excitement and joy. Okamo asked her if she was alone today. She replied that some had gone out to work, while others had gone to look for Konatsu. She had stayed home. The girl was surprised by the amount of food they had and asked Okamo where he got the money. He replied that the kind Ro had bought it for them, saying he couldn't show up empty-handed. The pink-haired girl approached Ro, observing him curiously, and said she felt like they'd met before. Suddenly, she got very close to his face, which made him tense up, internally noting how astonishing her speed was. She told him that his sister was someone she knew well. Okamo quickly interrupted her with a mysterious smile, saying she was mistaken and it was just her imagination. He then explained to Ro that the person who held that position in the past was the genius Yoko Nana.